A millionaire was stunned at Christmas dinner when he saw his ex-girlfriend with triplets at his mother's house. Hello everyone, lovers of mystery and drama. If you've ever felt underestimated, this is the story for you. A story of betrayal, redemption, and the power of claiming your own destiny. Like this video, subscribe, and get ready for a night that will change everything. Mark sat on a wooden bench under the shade of a massive tree in Central Park. He watched children running and playing, their faces glowing with innocence and joy, while their parents followed them with looks of pride and affection. The scene stirred something deep within him. Despite having everything he had ever dreamed of, luxury cars, a stunning mansion, he couldn't shake the persistent feeling of loneliness. His mother's words echoed in his mind. Life isn't measured by what you own, but by the connections you build. As he watched a small boy trying to toss a ball into a hoop, he wondered if he had wasted too much time chasing material goals. From a young age, Mark had been ambitious. Having grown up in a modest home, he had vowed to change his fate. With hard work and determination, he built an empire. But as he climbed the ladder of success, he left behind things that now felt vital. One of those things was Elizabeth. When a group of children ran past him, their laughter transported him back in time. He remembered how Elizabeth used to laugh at his jokes, even the silly ones. Their relationship had been a rare mix of trust and genuine love, something he had not felt since. Over the years, his relentless focus on work and his inability to prioritize her had driven her away. Elizabeth had been clear about what she needed, but he always found an excuse to put off their time together. One day, she simply left. Mark told himself it was for the best. He believed that his career and accomplishments would outweigh any personal loss. But now, sitting in that park and watching parents cherish simple moments with their children, he realized how wrong he had been. Pulling out his phone, he scrolled through his schedule. It was filled with endless meetings, calls, and commitments, but none of it brought him a true sense of fulfillment. He put the phone back in his pocket and looked around once more. A small girl stumbled and fell nearby. Mark moved to help her, but before he could, her mother ran over, lifting her and comforting her with tenderness. The scene gave him a pang in his chest. He wondered what it would be like to have a family of his own, to share moments like that. But he quickly pushed the thought away, convincing himself it wasn't for him. He had spent too long alone, and his life was too rigidly structured to accommodate the chaos of family life. An older man walking through the park with his dog paused briefly to greet him. Though surprised by the gesture, Mark responded with a slight smile. He was not used to the spontaneity of people. The brief interaction made him reflect on how much he had isolated himself in his bubble of luxury and work. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky with warm shades of orange and pink. Its light shimmered on the nearby lake, where children were throwing crumbs to the ducks. Mark got up from the bench, feeling he had stayed there long enough. Though the atmosphere of the park gave him a moment to think, it also reminded him of what he had lost. With his hands in his pockets and a distant look in his eyes, he slowly made his way toward the exit. As he walked past a balloon vendor, he paused, briefly considering buying one, for no particular reason. In the end, he kept walking. His thoughts were divided between the person he had worked so hard to become and the man he felt he truly was, a prisoner of his own choices. When he reached his car, he hesitated before opening the door. He saw a flash of his reflection in the car window. He looked impeccable, a tailored suit, a limited edition watch, and shoes that gleamed as if they were new. But beneath that perfect appearance, he felt drained. He got into the car and started the engine, letting its soft hum break the silence. On his way to his mansion, the images from the park persisted in his mind. He considered calling his mother something he rarely did. She had always been his biggest supporter, even when she disagreed with his decisions. As he stopped at a red light, he took out his phone and dialed her number. "Mark, what a surprise," she responded with warmth, her voice immediately putting him at ease. "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to hear your voice. How are you?" he asked, unsure of what had prompted the call. "I'm fine, as always. But the real question is, how are you? You sound different." Mark hesitated before answering. "I don't know. I just feel like I'm missing something. I'm tired, I guess." His mother was silent for a moment before offering her wisdom. "Perhaps what you're missing isn't in your work or the things you own. Perhaps it's time to think about what truly matters." Her words stayed with him when they ended the call. When he arrived home, he dropped his keys and phone on the entry table and went to the living room. The automatic lights illuminated a space that showcased his success but felt devoid of life. He sat on the couch, staring at the city lights through the enormous windows. His mother's words echoed in his mind. He knew she was right, but he had no idea where to start. As he watched the blinking lights of the skyscrapers, he made a silent decision. It was time for a change. Though he didn't know exactly how, he was clear that the first step was to admit that his life needed more than just work and success. Mark closed his eyes, allowing himself a rare moment of stillness. For the first time in years, he felt a faint flicker of hope, as if maybe there was something more meaningful out there for him. The next morning, Mark woke up early. But the unease from the night before persisted. He had spent hours tossing and turning, tormented by his mother's words and the images from the park that had stuck with him from the previous day. His mansion, pristine and perfectly designed, felt emptier than ever. The echo of his own footsteps as he made his way to the kitchen served as a stark reminder of his solitude. He quickly made himself a coffee, sat at the marble island, and looked at his tablet, scrolling through his day's schedule. Meetings, calls, lunch with important clients, and another night that would likely end with him coming home late. The routine that once gave him a sense of purpose now felt overwhelming and hollow. With a sigh, he closed the tablet, leaving his coffee half-finished. As he walked to his office, his mind drifted to the past. He thought of simpler times, before success had consumed every corner of his existence. His childhood had been modest, shaped by his mother's hard work and unwavering dedication after his father's passing. She spent long hours at a small neighborhood shop, but she always managed to make time to listen to him and encourage his dreams. Growing up without a father figure had driven him to become independent at a young age. Determined to spare his mother the sacrifices she had made, he promised himself that he would achieve success at any cost. With that resolve, he studied hard, worked tirelessly, and eventually built a fortune from nothing. But as he climbed higher, he left behind the things and people that truly mattered. Truly, one memory haunted him more than anything. Elizabeth. She had been the only true love of his life, but also the biggest casualty of his ambition. They had met at a business conference where she worked as an organizer, and their connection was immediate. Elizabeth had an energy that broke the tension of corporate life. Her laugh was contagious, and her simple, human perspective on the world captivated him. In the early years of their relationship, Mark felt different, lighter. Elizabeth helped him see beyond spreadsheets and deadlines, teaching him to appreciate the little things. But as his company grew, so did the demands on his time and attention. Weekends together were replaced by business trips, and romantic dinners gave way to endless meetings. There was one night he could never forget. Elizabeth had planned a special dinner to celebrate their anniversary. The table was set with candles, and the aroma of his favorite dish filled the room. But Mark was late, too consumed by an urgent work call to notice what he had missed. When he finally sat down at the table, his attention was still divided between his phone and the pile of papers he had brought with him. "Mark, can we just have one night to ourselves?" Elizabeth asked, her voice a mix of frustration and sadness. "I'm sorry. It's just been a difficult week. I promise I'll make it up to you soon," he replied, without even looking up from the report he was reviewing. That turned out to be one of the last meals they shared together. A few days later, Elizabeth packed her bags and left. There was no fight, no dramatic scene, just a brief note explaining that she couldn't stay in a relationship where she was always a last priority. At the time, Mark dismissed it, convinced she would come back once she understood his priorities. But days turned into weeks, weeks into years, and Elizabeth never returned. Now, sitting at his office desk, surrounded by stacks of contracts, he wondered how he had let someone so important slip away. The sound of his phone pulled him from his thoughts. It was Laura, his assistant, reminding him he had a meeting in an hour. "Thanks, Laura. I'll be there," he said. But he didn't move. Instead, he opened a desk drawer and pulled out a wooden box he had kept for years. Inside were old photographs, memories of a time when he still believed he could balance love and ambition. One photo showed him and Elizabeth at the beach, barefoot, smiling with the carefree joy of living in the moment. He traced the edges of the photo with his fingers, feeling a wave of nostalgia. He had spent so long chasing his goals that he had forgotten what it meant to truly live. Closing the box, he put it back in the drawer, but the feelings it had stirred up lingered. When he got to the meeting, his colleagues could tell he was distracted. Though he tried to focus on the discussion, his mind kept returning to the memories of Elizabeth and his mother's advice. When the meeting ended, he decided to cancel the rest of his appointments for the day. He drove aimlessly around the city, letting his thoughts wander. He passed by places that once held meaning for him, like the small cafe where he and Elizabeth used to meet before their relationship fell apart. He parked in front of the now renovated shop, staring at the familiar facade, hesitating to go inside for fear of confronting the memories. That night, back in his mansion, Mark decided to call his mother. Though they spoke often, he usually avoided personal topics. This time, however, he felt the need for her guidance. "Son, you sound troubled. What's on your mind?" she asked after a few minutes of casual conversation. "Mom, I'm just tired. I've achieved everything I ever wanted, but I still feel like I'm missing something." She paused before responding. "Mark, maybe what you're looking for isn't in business. Sometimes you have to look back to understand what you've left behind." Her words struck him with unexpected intensity. He knew they were true, but he also understood that facing the past would not be easy. As he hung up the phone, he made a decision he hadn't dared to make in years, to reconnect with something more than just contracts and numbers. He resolved to rebuild the bonds with the people who truly mattered. Did Mark's decision to prioritize work over Elizabeth make him a failure? Do you think he can truly atone for the years he spent in pursuit of success? Mark arrived at his mother's house on a quiet afternoon. The house, modest but cozy, was adorned with small Christmas decorations. Twinkling lights framed the window, and a wreath of dried flowers hung on the front door. As he got out of his car, he caught the scent of freshly baked bread in the air, instantly transporting him back to his childhood. Though he rarely said it aloud, visiting this place always brought him comfort. His mother greeted him with a warm smile, as if no time had passed since their last meeting. She wore a white apron with faint flour smudges, and her face beamed with joy at having her son home. "Mark, son, it's so good to see you. Come in. I was just making something special," she said, pulling him into a tight embrace. Mark returned the hug, a rare gesture for him, but one that felt right in that moment. They walked into the house together, and his mother led him to the kitchen, where a tray of cookies was cooling on the table. The space was inviting, filled with small touches that reflected her love for her home. They settled in the living room, where the soft crackling of the fireplace added warmth to the ambiance. Mark's eyes fell on the photographs on the walls, snapshots of his childhood that gave him a mix of nostalgia and longing. One photo, in particular, always caught his eye. A young version of himself holding a balloon in the park, with his mother by his side. "How have you been, Mom?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Oh, I'm doing well, as always. My garden is thriving this year, and the neighbors have been so kind. But tell me about you, son. How are you?" she responded, pouring them both cups of tea. Mark paused before answering, not wanting to burden her with his worries. "I've been okay, just a little tired. Work takes up most of my time, but I'm used to it," he said with a slight smile. She gave him a look of understanding but didn't press. She knew her son well enough to know he didn't always share what he truly felt. They spent the afternoon chatting about light topics like her gardening plans and what was happening in the neighborhood. Mark found solace in the simplicity of their conversation, a sharp contrast to the tense meetings and endless obligations of his daily life. Deep down, however, his mother sensed there was more to his visit, something he wasn't ready to talk about. As evening approached, she got up from her seat and went to the kitchen, returning with a box adorned with festive Christmas designs. She handed it to Mark. "This is for you, son. It's a reminder that no matter what, you always have a place here." Mark opened the box to find a collection of cookies, along with a handwritten note tucked inside. The note read, "Family will always be your greatest success." Those simple yet powerful words resonated with him, stirring up emotions he hadn't anticipated. As he carefully closed the box, his mother took the moment to make a suggestion. "I want you to spend Christmas here this year. It's been so long since we celebrated the holidays together, and I think you could use a break from everything for a while." Mark hesitated. He knew she was right, but the thought of spending Christmas there also meant facing feelings he had buried for years. "I'm not sure, Mom. I have a lot going on at the office. Maybe next year," he offered, hoping it would be enough. But she was not easily swayed. "Mark, you always say that. I understand that work is important to you, but life doesn't wait. If you don't make time for what truly matters, one day you'll realize it's too late." Her words hit him hard. He knew she was right, even if admitting it wasn't easy. After a moment of silence, he exhaled and nodded. "Okay, Mom, I'll spend Christmas with you." She smiled, a look of triumph softening her face. "I'm so glad to hear it. I'm planning something special this year, and I think it'll be a Christmas you won't forget." Mark didn't press for details, but her tone piqued his curiosity. As night fell, he said his goodbyes, promising to return soon. On his way back to his own house, her words lingered in his thoughts. He knew that his mother had always been his greatest supporter, even during the times when he was too preoccupied to notice. Now, with her invitation to spend Christmas together, he felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. When he arrived home, he placed the box of cookies on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a few moments. The words of the note echoed in his mind, a reminder that despite achieving all of his dreams, something was still missing. He sank onto the living room couch, contemplating the city lights outside the window. For the first time in a long time, he felt that there might be a chance to reconnect with what truly mattered. Though he wasn't sure what Christmas with his mother would bring, he felt it was a step in the right direction. He closed his eyes, allowing the exhaustion of the day to wash over him. But his mother's words continued to resonate. Family will always be your greatest success. Elizabeth woke up early, as she did every day. to the jarring sound of her alarm clock, which left no room for lingering in bed. The morning light filtered through the worn curtains of her small apartment, illuminating a simple but tidy room. The cheerful voices of her daughters resonated from the next room, filling the space with giggling and playful shouts as they got ready for the day. She jumped out of bed, pulled a sweater over her pajamas, and headed straight for the kitchen to prepare breakfast. The rich aroma of coffee filled the room as she made a platter of toast for the girls. They were full of energy, scampering around the table as they eagerly awaited their food. Mom, can we go to the park after school today?" one of them asked, her smile lighting up the whole kitchen. Elizabeth smiled as she poured herself a cup of coffee. "If you finish your homework on time, we can go," she replied, gently stroking the head of one of them before sitting down. As the triplets ate their breakfast, Elizabeth found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed over the years. Things had taken a dramatic turn since she decided to leave Mark. Though she had loved him deeply, she knew that staying meant continuing to feel invisible, a shadow behind his relentless ambition. She had tried to talk to him countless times, but he always seemed too busy to listen. Dinners had become solitary affairs, conversations had become work monologues, and the love they once shared had slowly faded. When she discovered she was pregnant, she was overwhelmed with uncertainty. The thought of raising her daughters alone was terrifying, but staying and enduring Mark's indifference felt even worse. With a broken heart, she left Mark a note explaining her decision and left before she could change her mind. She found a modest place to rebuild her life, far from the luxury and success they had shared. Over the years, she worked tirelessly to support her daughters, facing the challenges of being a single mother, but remaining determined to give them a better life. That morning, as she walked to work after dropping the girls off at school, Elizabeth thought about the sacrifices she had made and the secrets she had kept. She had never told Mark about their daughters, not because she wanted to keep them from him, but because she feared he wasn't ready for the responsibility. For years, she told herself she had made the right decision, though the weight of it often tormented her. Her job at a small local boutique was not glamorous, but it provided the stability she needed to care for her girls. Her days were spent helping customers, organizing inventory, and dreaming of a brighter future for her family. Despite the hardships, she found joy in the small moments. Her daughters' hugs at the end of the day, their laughter as they played together, and the rare, peaceful moments when she could sit down to read a book. One afternoon, as her shift at the store was ending, she received an unexpected phone call. It was Mark's mother. Though they had lost touch after Elizabeth left, they had always maintained a respectful relationship. Hearing her voice stirred a mix of surprise and nervousness in Elizabeth. "Elizabeth, I know this call is unexpected, but I need to talk to you," the woman said in a tone that was both kind and firm. "Of course, ma'am. Is everything okay?" Elizabeth asked, not knowing what to expect. "I want to invite you to my Christmas dinner this year. I know you and Mark aren't in touch, but I believe it's time to heal some wounds." Elizabeth paused, taking a moment to process the invitation. The thought of facing Mark after so many years filled her with a mix of anxiety and curiosity. "I'm not sure that's a good idea. So much has happened," she began, but Mark's mother gently interrupted her. "I understand, Elizabeth, but I want you to think about it. I believe it could be an important moment for everyone." After the call ended, Elizabeth sat in silence, reflecting on the invitation. She knew that facing Mark would be a challenge, but deep down, she felt that it might be time to confront the past she had been avoiding for so long. That evening, as she had dinner with her daughters, she looked at their innocent, joyful faces. She wondered what their lives would be like if they had the chance to know their father, if they could build a connection with him. Though she was afraid of Mark's reaction to learning the truth, she realized she couldn't keep it a secret forever. In the days that followed, Elizabeth found herself thinking more and more about the invitation. Memories resurfaced of the happy times she shared with Mark. Their laughter and love before work and ambition tore them apart. She also remembered the heartbreak of her departure, the uncertainty of raising her daughters alone, and the nights spent questioning whether she had made the right choices. After a great deal of self-reflection, she finally decided to accept the invitation. Facing Mark would not be easy, but she knew she couldn't continue to carry the weight of her secret. On Christmas morning, Elizabeth woke up early to get ready. She helped her daughters get dressed in their finest outfits, explaining that they were going to meet someone special. Though she didn't give them all the details, she wanted them to be ready for what was to come. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw a mix of nervousness and resolve. She knew the night would change their lives forever, but she trusted that she was making the right decision. Seeing her daughters playing in the living room, she smiled. No matter what happened, she was determined to face it for them. When it was time to leave, she took each of her daughters by the hand and walked out of the apartment. The cool afternoon air enveloped them as they walked toward the car that would take them to Mark's mother's house. With every step they took closer, Elizabeth couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to take an unexpected turn. Was Elizabeth right to keep the children a secret from Mark? What would you have done in her situation? Mark's mother's house glowed with soft, twinkling Christmas lights, creating a warm and festive atmosphere. The smell of fresh cooked food wafted through the air, mixing with the gentle sound of carols playing in the background. Elizabeth arrived with her daughters, who looked in awe at the bright decorations and the magical glow of the lights. She took a deep breath before knocking on the door, trying to calm the nerves that had built up for days. Mark's mother opened the door with a wide smile, her face lighting up with genuine warmth at the sight of them. She leaned in to hug Elizabeth, and then knelt to greet the girls, who responded shyly but with curiosity. "Welcome. Come in. Dinner is ready," she said with enthusiasm, ushering them inside. Elizabeth looked around, noticing the familiar details she remembered from the few times she had visited. Photos still adorned the walls, and a large, perfectly decorated Christmas tree stood as the centerpiece of the living room. Though she tried to remain calm, her mind raced, picturing the moment she would see Mark. The girls, excited by the festive atmosphere, began to explore the room, examining every detail. Mark's mother showed them the tree and even allowed them to hang a few more ornaments, which made them smile. Elizabeth watched them, feeling a mix of pride and unease. She knew that what was about to happen would change their lives forever. Meanwhile, Mark arrived at the house a few minutes later. He parked in the driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at the lights that twinkled on the porch. He had accepted his mother's invitation, but something about the night felt different. For the past few days, she had insisted that this Christmas would be special, though she hadn't shared many details. Finally, he turned off the engine, got out of the car, and adjusted his jacket before heading for the door. As he walked in, he was met with a warm hug from his mother and the familiar aroma of Christmas dinner that filled the house. He smiled as he greeted her, but his mind was divided between the present and the memories this home always evoked. He made his way to the living room, expecting to find the other guests, but he stopped abruptly as he entered. Standing in front of him was Elizabeth. His heart seemed to skip a beat at the sight of her after all these years. She stood near the tree, her expression a mix of surprise and nervousness. Around her, 3 small girls were playing with the tree's ornaments. Mark felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room as he tried to process what he was seeing. Elizabeth whispered his name almost breathlessly, unable to tear her eyes away from him. Though she had anticipated this moment, she couldn't help the lump that formed in her throat. She took a step toward him, trying to maintain her composure. "Hello, Mark," she said softly, her voice steady despite the slight trembling in her hands. The silence that followed was broken by the girls, who turned to look at the man who had just arrived. Their identical, bright eyes shone with curiosity. Mark couldn't stop staring at them, noticing the dark hair and features that were eerily familiar. "Who are they?" he finally asked, though deep down he already suspected the answer. Elizabeth took a deep breath before responding, knowing she couldn't avoid the question. "They're our daughters," she said, her voice firm but thick with emotion. The weight of her words hit him at once. Mark felt as if the ground beneath his feet was shifting. He looked at Elizabeth, hoping for some sign that it was all a misunderstanding. But the honesty in her expression left no room for doubt. "How could you not tell me?" he asked, his voice shaking under the weight of shock, confusion, and anger. Elizabeth held his gaze, though the hurt in her eyes was unmistakable. "It was a decision I made at the time. I thought it was for the best for them and for you. You weren't ready to be a father, Mark. I wasn't ready to face it alone either. But I did what I believed was right." Mark ran a hand through his hair, trying to process everything he had just heard. The girls watched him with curiosity, unaware of the tension that filled the room. One of them, the boldest of the group, slowly approached him, holding a small Christmas ornament in her tiny hands. "Are you our daddy?" she asked innocently, her voice breaking the silence. The question caught him off guard, but it also forced him to focus on what truly mattered. He looked at the girl, then at Elizabeth, who nodded softly, giving him permission to take a step forward. Mark crouched down to her level, looking her directly in the eyes. "Yes," he finally said, his voice softening. "I think so." His words came with a sense of warmth he hadn't expected. The girl smiled and handed him the ornament. The other two, encouraged by the interaction, also came up to him, surrounding him with a quiet curiosity. In that moment, Mark felt something shift deep inside him. Though the situation was overwhelming, it was also undeniably beautiful. Elizabeth stood at a distance, tears in her eyes. She had feared this moment for so long, but seeing Mark with the girls stirred a hope she hadn't felt in years. Just then, Mark's mother walked into the room, breaking the tension with her usual warmth. "It seems you're all getting acquainted," she said, her voice bright. "Why don't we all sit down for dinner?" She gestured to the dining table that she had so carefully prepared. Everyone made their way to the dining room, where the atmosphere became noticeably lighter. Though there was still much to address, the first step had been taken. Over dinner, Mark listened intently as the girls shared their interests and dreams. He began to ask them questions, trying to understand who they were and what role he could play in their lives. Elizabeth, though still nervous, began to feel that maybe accepting the invitation had been the right decision. For the first time in years, she saw the possibility of a brighter future, not just for her daughters, but for her and Mark as well. Both of them understood that the road ahead would not be easy, but they were willing to try. Later that night, after the dinner that changed their lives, Mark couldn't sleep. His mind was flooded with questions, memories, and emotions he had buried for years. Finding out he was the father of 3 girls had taken his breath away, but it had also awakened something in him, something he could no longer ignore. He wanted to know more, to understand what had happened, and, most importantly, why Elizabeth had kept him in the dark for so long. The next morning, as the sunlight began to warm his mother's house, Mark saw Elizabeth in the small backyard. She was sitting on a wooden bench, watching the girls play on the lawn. Their carefree laughter and smiles were a sharp contrast to her serious expression, lost in thought. He approached her quietly, not wanting to intrude, but Elizabeth noticed him, and gave him a slight smile. Mark sat down beside her, the silence lingering for a bit before he broke it. "Elizabeth, we need to talk. There are too many things I just don't understand," he said, his tone a mix of urgency and restraint. She nodded, knowing this conversation was inevitable. It was time to confront the truth, though reliving those memories was sure to hurt. "I owe you an explanation, Mark," Elizabeth said, taking a deep breath as she gathered her thoughts. She began to recount how, in the last few months of their relationship, she had felt increasingly invisible in his life. Mark had always been busy, focused on his career, consumed by his goals. Though she had tried to talk to him many times, he never seemed to truly listen. "When I found out I was pregnant, I was scared. Scared of how you would react, scared that you wouldn't want to take on the responsibility. But more than anything, I was afraid that the girls would grow up feeling like they didn't matter to you, just like I felt during those last few months," she admitted, her voice trembling. Mark lowered his gaze, her words striking a painful chord. He could see now how absorbed he had been in his own world, missing the signs that Elizabeth was drifting away. "But why didn't you tell me afterward? Why didn't you give me the chance to be there for them?" he asked, trying to contain his frustration, though his voice gave it away a bit. Elizabeth sighed and picked up a fallen leaf from the nearby tree, turning it over in her hands. "I tried to call you once, months after I left," she began, her tone tinged with sadness. "But when I did, I heard the sound of a meeting in the background. You were talking about a new project, and you sounded so happy, so focused. I just couldn't do it. I thought it was better to let you continue living your life without that burden." Her words hit Mark like a hammer. He realized then how much his decisions had affected not only Elizabeth, but the daughters he didn't know existed. "You were never a burden to me, Elizabeth, not you or the girls. I'm so sorry if I ever made you feel that way," he said, his voice heavy with sincerity. Elizabeth looked at him, surprised by the raw vulnerability in his tone. She had expected anger or resentment, but instead she found genuine remorse. "It was difficult, Mark," she admitted, raising them alone, working to support us, making sure they never lacked for anything. "But in the end, it was worth it. They are my greatest pride, and I'd do it all again if I had to," Mark responded with a mix of determination and tenderness. He watched the girls as they ran across the yard, their laughter filling the air. In them, he saw fragments of himself and Elizabeth, a mix that both fascinated and overwhelmed him. "I want to be a part of their lives, to be their father, even though I know I can't get back the time I lost," he said finally, breaking the silence. Elizabeth looked at him again, this time with a slight smile, as if she were ready to give him a chance. "That's up to you, Mark. They're wonderful girls, but they'll need more than just words. They need action, commitment. If you truly want to be there for them, you'll have to prove it." He nodded, accepting the challenge. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, he felt ready to try. He had found a purpose that went beyond his career or his personal accomplishments. What do you think Mark should do to earn back Elizabeth's trust and become a good father to the triplets? On Christmas morning, the mother of Mark's house was quiet. Sunlight filtered softly through the windows, adorned with garlands, and the smell of hot cocoa filled the air. The girls were the first to wake, buzzing with excitement to see the presents waiting for them under the tree. The sound of laughter echoed through the house as the girls rushed to the living room, where the towering Christmas tree was decked out with twinkling lights and shiny ornaments. Elizabeth, still half asleep, came out of her room to find the girls eagerly searching through the beautifully wrapped packages. A smile spread across her face as she watched their joy. Meanwhile, Mark, who had decided to spend the holidays at his mother's house, was already in the kitchen, helping with breakfast. He wore an apron that hung awkwardly loose, something the girls instantly noticed, leading to playful jokes. Mark approached Elizabeth with a steaming mug of coffee and handed it to her. She accepted it with a soft smile, grateful for the thoughtful gesture. They stood together, watching the girls open their first gifts, savoring the calm of the moment, a rarity neither of them took for granted. Hours flew by in a blur of games, laughter, and small kitchen mishaps as everyone chipped in to prepare the Christmas meal. Mark's mother oversaw the preparations with a watchful eye, making sure every detail was perfect. It was evident that she was enjoying having the family reunited under one roof, something that hadn't happened in years. When they finally sat down at the dining table, the atmosphere was filled with warmth and gratitude. The meal was simple, yet delicious, and conversations flowed easily as everyone shared stories and memories. The girls, as energetic as ever, chattered non-stop about their gifts and plans for later. During the meal, Mark stood up, raised his glass, and addressed the room, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to thank all of you for letting me be here today. These last few weeks have been a gift I never expected. Elizabeth, thank you for allowing me into your lives. And to you girls, thank you for teaching me the meaning of true happiness." The room was silent for a moment before the girls erupted in applause, beaming with excitement. Elizabeth's gaze softened as she looked at Mark, recognizing the sincere effort he was making to be a part of their lives. After lunch, the family made their way to the backyard, where the girls played an enthusiastic game of catch while the adults watched. Unable to resist, Mark joined in, chasing the ball and laughing freely in a way Elizabeth hadn't seen in years. As the sun set in the sky, the girls returned to the living room, where the fireplace cast a warm glow. They cuddled together on the couch under soft blankets as Elizabeth read a Christmas story aloud. Mark watched from a nearby chair, captivated by the bond Elizabeth shared with their daughters. It was a scene he had never imagined for himself, but now he couldn't imagine letting it go. Later in the evening, Mark found Elizabeth in the kitchen as she finished cleaning the last of the dishes. He stood there silently for a moment before speaking. "Today has been one of the happiest days of my life. Thank you for giving me this chance, Elizabeth. I know I can't undo the past, but I want you to know that I am fully committed to our future and the future of our daughters." Elizabeth looked at him with a mix of surprise and emotion. In the past few weeks, she had seen a completely different side of Mark, one who was willing to work hard for the people he loved. "I know, Mark. There's still a lot to rebuild, but I think we're heading in the right direction," she said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Just then, his daughters, curious as ever, burst into the kitchen, interrupting the conversation. They wrapped their small arms around Mark's legs, asking him to read them another bedtime story. He couldn't say no and led them back to the living room where the family gathered around the fireplace. Mark's mother, seated in a nearby rocking chair, watched the scene with a look of contentment. For her, this Christmas was more than just festive traditions. It was proof of how love and forgiveness could transform lives. Before heading to bed, the girls insisted on hanging their Christmas stockings on the mantel, in hopes that they would be filled with treats in the morning. Mark helped them, making sure everything was perfect. As he tucked them into bed, each of them gave him a kiss on the cheek, a gesture that moved him deeply. That night, as the rest of the house slept, Mark stayed in the living room, looking at the Christmas tree and reflecting on how much his life had changed in such a short time. He realized he had found something money could never buy: a family. When Elizabeth realized he wasn't in bed, she came downstairs and found him sitting on the couch. Silently, she joined him, sitting beside him before finally speaking. "You've done so much in these last few weeks, Mark. The girls adore you, and I'm starting to see the man I once fell in love with." Her words took him by surprise, but he felt grateful. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he replied with sincerity. "I want to be here for you, not just today, but always." A tear rolled down Elizabeth's cheek as she nodded. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she was willing to try. This Christmas had brought more than just presents and celebrations. It had brought a chance to start over, to heal old wounds, and to build a future together. That night, as the clock struck midnight, Mark and Elizabeth shared an embrace that symbolized much more than the end of a special day. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, a life they were ready to face together as a family.
The city was alive, as it always was. Washington, D.C. glowed under the soft light of a spring morning. The streets hummed with the ambition of professionals and dreamers alike, each chasing their own vision of success. Among them were Ethan Carter and Maya Hart, a couple whose love once felt like a masterpiece. Ethan Carter was a name synonymous with innovation. At 34, he had built a multi-million-dollar tech empire, transforming ideas into reality with a single-minded determination. To the world, he was a genius, a visionary. To Maya, however, he was once just a man who danced with her under the rain without a care in the world. Maya Hart, 30, was a celebrated art curator known for her ability to unearth raw emotional talent in the most unexpected places. She lived for color, spontaneity, and the beauty of imperfection. Everything that Ethan's meticulously planned world lacked. Their love was born from contrasts, thriving on the harmony they once created between his structured ambition and her boundless creativity. But now, years after their first chance meeting, that harmony had faded. Though they shared the same home, they lived in separate worlds. Ethan was consumed by deadlines, board meetings, and market shares. Maya felt invisible, her voice drowned out by the relentless hum of his empire. The question loomed, heavy and unresolved. What happens when two people who once built a love story that felt like art find themselves struggling to hold it together? Years ago, when their love was just beginning to blossom, Ethan and Maya shared a story that felt like a dream. They met on a spring morning at a small cafe in Georgetown. Ethan, a final-year MBA student, was rushing to prepare for a major presentation. Dressed in a sharp suit with a leather briefcase in hand, he looked every bit the focused businessman. Maya, a freelance artist, walked in wearing a flowing marigold dress, her smile lighting up the room. They collided at the entrance, causing Maya's phone to tumble to the ground. "I'm so sorry," they both said in unison, bending down to retrieve the phone. Their eyes met. Ethan was captivated by the warmth in Maya's gaze, while Maya saw a mix of ambition and gentleness in his. From that day on, they became inseparable. Ethan, who thrived on carefully crafted schedules, discovered a sense of freedom he never knew he needed. Maya taught him to find joy in the little moments. Sitting under cherry blossoms, sharing late-night conversations, or dancing in the rain. One evening, while walking through the National Mall, a sudden rainstorm caught them off guard. Instead of seeking shelter, Maya pulled Ethan into her arms and said, "Let's dance, Ethan. Not everything in life needs a plan." And so they danced, ignoring the curious stares of passers-by. For Ethan, it was the moment he realized Maya had brought color, to his black and white world. Their love grew in moments like these, simple but profound, light yet meaningful. Ethan shared his dream of building a tech company that could change the world, while Maya spoke of her desire to bring art closer to the community. They believed their love could merge their different worlds into one beautiful masterpiece. As time passed, Ethan and Maya's love no longer felt like the masterpiece it once was. They were married and living together, but the distance between them grew wider with each passing day. Ethan, now the CEO of a thriving tech company, was consumed by meetings, expansion projects, and ambitious goals. He believed he was building a better future for them both. Yet, in doing so, he failed to see how he was pushing Maya further away. Maya continued to pursue her career in art, but she felt invisible in her own home. She tried to reconnect with Ethan through small, meaningful gestures, romantic dinners, paintings capturing their happiest memories. But Ethan's work always took precedence, leaving her efforts unnoticed. One evening, Maya spent the entire day preparing a special dinner to celebrate their wedding anniversary. She reserved a table at the restaurant where they had celebrated their engagement, requested the same songs that had played that night, and wore the dress Ethan once said was his favorite. But Ethan arrived late, distracted by his phone and the urgency of his business. "I'm sorry," he said hastily, placing his phone on the table. "The company has a huge opportunity right now, and things like this don't happen twice." Maya smiled, but inside, she felt something breaking. That night, she walked into Ethan's office and stared at the paintings she had hung on the walls, pieces that told the story of their love. Ethan had never truly noticed them. It was then that Maya realized she had been fighting for their marriage alone. Without a word, she began planning her departure. She wrote a letter, left her wedding ring on the easel in her studio, along with one final painting, a depiction of two paths diverging, each leading in a separate direction. Maya understood that sometimes love isn't about holding on, it's about learning to let go so both can find themselves again. When Ethan returned home that evening, he found the apartment empty. In Maya's studio, her wedding ring rested on the easel beside a final painting. The image depicted two paths diverging, each leading in separate directions. On his desk, there was a letter from Maya. In the letter, Maya wrote, "Ethan, I've tried everything to keep our love alive, but love cannot survive when only one person is fighting for it. I hope you understand that sometimes, to truly love someone, we must let them go." Her words hit Ethan like a thunderbolt, but it was the silence in their empty home that truly broke him. The absence of Maya's laughter, the untouched dinner table, and the faint scent of her favorite perfume lingering in the air made him realize how much of her he had taken for granted. At night, he lay awake, replaying every moment he had dismissed her efforts, every time he chose work over her. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his own ambition crushing him. Not because of its demands, but because of what it had cost him. Each painting depicted a moment from their story, their first meeting, their dance in the rain, and the joyful early days of their marriage. Realizing he had lost the most important part of his life, Ethan made a decision he had never thought possible. He stepped away from his empire. He enrolled in an art class at Georgetown, where he struggled to hold a brush steady, his fingers more accustomed to keyboards than canvases. One evening, he found himself sitting in a quiet gallery, staring at a painting of cherry blossoms. For the first time, he understood what Maya had tried to show him all those years: the beauty in stillness, the depth in imperfection. Each stroke on the canvas seemed to whisper to him, reminding him of what he had lost and what he needed to fight for. After months of searching, Ethan finally received an important lead. Maya was hosting an exhibition in Montreal. Without hesitation, he booked a flight to see her. At the exhibition, Ethan's breath caught as he stood before a large painting, a vivid depiction of Washington, D.C. through Maya's eyes. It wasn't just a painting, it was their story, told in vibrant strokes and delicate details. He traced each scene with his eyes: their penthouse balcony, the National Mall where they danced, the cafe where they first met. But it was the final section of the painting that struck him most: a fractured image of two figures reaching for each other, separated by a sea of data and colors. As he turned, his gaze met Maya's across the room. Her eyes held a mixture of surprise, pain, and something else he dared to hope was forgiveness. The gallery, filled with murmurs and soft footsteps, faded into the background as they stood facing each other, the space between them heavy with unspoken words. The painting felt like an unspoken letter from Maya, recounting their story, from the beautiful beginning to the painful cracks that formed over time. When Ethan turned, he saw Maya standing across the gallery. She looked at him, and in their shared gaze there was a mix of pain, understanding, and a glimmer of hope. Ethan realized that in finding Maya, he had also rediscovered himself. Maya stood across from Ethan in the gallery, the space between them like a delicate line separating the past and the present. The room was quiet, save for the soft murmurs of other visitors. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped toward her. "Maya," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I was wrong. I lost you, and I don't know if I can fix this, but I want to try." Maya looked at him, her eyes searching his. After a pause, she asked, "Ethan, I found myself again when I left you. But what have you done to find yourself?" Ethan began to tell her about the months he spent trying to change. He spoke of the art classes he attended at Georgetown, learning to see the world through her perspective. He described how he had restructured his company, reducing his workload, empowering his leadership team, and creating a culture where people mattered more than numbers. Maya didn't respond immediately. Instead, she guided him through the gallery, explaining her paintings and the stories behind them. She wanted Ethan to see not only how she had grown, but also what she had learned from their love and separation. Eventually, they stopped in front of a particular painting, an image of two figures dancing in the rain, surrounded by numbers and data arranged into blooming cherry blossoms. Maya explained, "This is how I see us now, a blend of your world and mine. But the question is, Ethan, can we truly come back together?" Ethan's reply was earnest. "You're right. We've both changed. But I believe that if we rebuild from the ground up, with respect for who we've become, we can create something even more beautiful." Maya smiled, her expression a mix of hesitation and hope. "If that's the case, let's try. But we're not going back to what was. This has to be a new beginning." That evening, they walked together through the snowy streets of Montreal, sharing stories, dreams, and even the pain they had carried. For the first time in years, they felt like partners instead of two lost souls. Their new beginning wasn't perfect, but it was honest. They set rules for themselves. No phones at dinner, time dedicated to each other's passions, and a reminder that love isn't about control, it's about harmony. They weren't returning to the past. They were moving forward, creating a new chapter in their love story, one that wasn't perfect, but authentic and full of hope. 1 year after the exhibition in Montreal, Ethan and Maya had built an entirely new life together, a harmonious blend of their two worlds. They moved into a loft in Mile End, where the space was divided in two, Maya's bright sunlit art studio on one side and Ethan's sleek modern workspace on the other. Their lives no longer revolved solely around work or art. It revolved around connection. Every Sunday morning, they would stroll through the farmer's market together, selecting fresh ingredients and savoring simple, meaningful moments. Maya, now a celebrated artist, had just launched the biggest exhibition of her career, Digital Blossoms, a seamless fusion of technology and traditional art. Her paintings reflected not only her personal journey, but also the tumultuous yet beautiful love story she shared with Ethan. Ethan had also transformed, mastering the balance between work and life. His company, now headquartered in Canada, had become a model for human-centered innovation. Maya's influence had inspired him to incorporate art into technology, creating products that resonated with people on an emotional level. One morning, as Maya worked on a new painting in her studio, Ethan walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. "What do you think about hanging this in the living room?" he asked, gesturing to her unfinished piece, a vivid, abstract depiction of 2 hands holding each other amidst blooming cherry blossoms. Maya smiled. "Are you sure? It'll break the minimalist vibe of your space." "Sometimes, a little chaos is exactly what makes something perfect," Ethan replied, his eyes full of love. During that time, Maya shared something extraordinary. She was pregnant. Ethan was so overcome with emotion that he was momentarily speechless. After all they had been through, they weren't just building a new life, they were preparing to welcome a new chapter, a family. That evening, they stood together on their balcony, looking out at the twinkling lights of Montreal. Ethan gently wrapped his arms around Maya, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "Life isn't perfect," Maya whispered, "but it's a masterpiece, and we're painting it together." Ethan smiled. "We lost each other once, but now, I'll never let you go again." They hadn't just found each other again, they had learned to love in a new way, honest, hopeful, and enduring. That evening, after Ethan and Maya gazed out at the twinkling lights of Montreal, an unspoken thought lingered in Ethan's mind, something he had never dared to express before. The next morning, while Maya was engrossed in finishing her latest painting in the studio, Ethan left the house earlier than usual, but he didn't head to the office or any meetings. Instead, he found himself at a small jewelry shop tucked away on one of Montreal's cobblestone streets. "I need something truly special," he told the jeweler, his voice filled with quiet determination. "Something that can say all the things I never managed to say, that can mend the mistakes I've made, and that can hold the love I want to protect forever." The jeweler smiled knowingly. After hearing Ethan's story, she suggested a hand-engraved bracelet adorned with a delicate cherry blossom charm, a symbol of renewal and enduring love. Beneath the charm, she engraved a message in small, elegant letters: "For every season, for every storm, I choose you." That evening, Ethan returned home with the small box in hand. Maya was in the kitchen preparing dinner, her face glowing even in the simplicity of the moment. "I have something for you," Ethan said, stepping closer. He opened the box to reveal the sparkling bracelet, the cherry blossom charm catching the light. Maya stood in silence for a moment, her hand gently tracing the charm. "In?" she asked, her voice filled with surprise and emotion. "It's a promise," Ethan said, his tone steady and warm, "that no matter what happens, through the beautiful springs or the hardest storms, I will always choose you." Maya couldn't stop the tears that welled up in her eyes. She wrapped her arms around Ethan, feeling the depth of his sincerity. "Thank you," she whispered, "not for the bracelet, but for learning how to love me the way I needed to be loved." That evening, as they sat together by candlelight, the bracelet sparkled on Maya's wrist, a quiet reminder of their shared promise. Their love was no longer just a story of the past or a dream for the future. It was a choice they made every single day. In a small ballet studio, tiny feet moved hesitantly to the rhythm of the music. Emma Reyes walked gracefully among her students, gently adjusting their postures. Teaching ballet was more than a job for her. It was her passion. "Good job, Sophia. Keep your back straight," she encouraged a brown-haired girl struggling with an arabesque pose. After class, Emma packed her bag and hurried home. A small but cozy apartment awaited her, where her husband, Daniel, and their twin sons, Ethan and Liam, were waiting. She smiled at the sight of Daniel trying to help the boys with their homework. "Have they been good today?" she asked, sitting down beside him. "They're learning math, and I think I'm the one who needs help," Daniel joked, making Emma laugh. They weren't rich, but they had each other. And for Emma, that was enough. On late nights, when the twins were asleep, she and Daniel would sit by the window, dreaming about the future. Emma always wanted to open her own ballet academy, a place where underprivileged children could learn to dance, where ballet wasn't just a distant dream. "One day you'll have it," Daniel told her, squeezing her hand. Emma believed him, but she had no idea that life was about to take a completely different turn. Emma would never forget that fateful day, the day the doctor looked at her with solemn eyes, his voice heavy with regret. "Your husband has late-stage cancer. I'm so sorry." The room suddenly felt ice cold. Daniel squeezed her hand, even though he was the one staring death in the face. "We'll fight this," Emma whispered, as if saying it firmly enough could change their fate. They sold everything, their old car, their furniture, even Emma's grandmother's wedding ring, to pay for treatments. But Daniel's condition worsened. One late afternoon, as the setting sun bathed the hospital room in golden light, Daniel looked at Emma and murmured, "You have to be strong. For Ethan and Liam." "You're going to make it," she choked out. Daniel smiled but said nothing more. That night, he passed away in his sleep, leaving Emma with a grief too deep to bear. But she had no time to mourn. The medical bills piled up, the rent was due, and her small salary couldn't cover it all. Then, the inevitable happened. The landlord knocked on their door, his voice devoid of sympathy. "Ms. Reyes, I need the apartment vacant by the end of the month." Emma packed up the little they had left, holding her sons close. With nowhere else to go, she stepped out into the night, into an uncertain future. She had never thought she would become homeless, but now it was her reality. The air was getting colder as Emma pulled her coat tighter, trying to shield Ethan and Liam, who were dozing off in her arms. She had spent the entire day walking, searching for a temporary shelter, but every place was full. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't have any available beds," the shelter worker said with a sympathetic look. Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She couldn't cry, not in front of her boys. She was their mother. She had to be strong. As night fell, she found herself at the city's central train station, a place she had never imagined calling home. Around her, other homeless people curled up on benches, seeking warmth in the winter cold. "We'll stay here tonight, my loves," she whispered, pulling her children close. "We'll have a new home soon, right, Mom?" Ethan asked, his voice sleepy. "Of course, sweetheart," she assured him, even though she wasn't sure if that was true. As the station emptied out, Emma gazed up at the towering ceiling, listening to the distant echoes of train announcements. A small corner of the platform was now their home. She squeezed her son's hands. As long as they were together, she would never give up. But she had no idea that this place would lead her to the man who would change her life forever. The first days at the train station were brutal. Emma quickly learned that to survive, she had to adapt. Every morning, she woke up before everyone else, leading Ethan and Liam to the public restroom to wash up. She clung to a tiny bar of soap and an old comb like they were treasures, doing her best to make her boys look presentable. "Can we go to school, Mom?" Liam asked one morning. Emma froze for a second before forcing a gentle smile. "Soon, sweetheart, I promise." But even that promise felt fragile. While her sons played nearby, Emma searched for a way to earn money. One day, an elderly woman named Margaret, a longtime flower vendor at the station, took notice of her. "Girl, do you want to help me?" Margaret held out a bouquet of roses. I don't have any money." "It's not for selling, it's for sharing." Emma took the flowers, her hands trembling. From that day on, she helped Margaret sell flowers, earning just enough to buy bread and milk for her children. Over time, she learned to quietly evade security guards and find hidden corners where they could exist without being seen. One night, as Emma packed up the remaining flowers, she felt someone watching her. From a distance, a tall man in a dark suit leaned against a stone pillar, his gaze fixed on her. "Who is that?" she whispered to Margaret. "They call him Nathan Carter," the old woman said. "He owns half the businesses in this district. But be careful. Word is, he's planning to tear this station down." Emma gripped the flowers tightly. If the station was destroyed, where would they go? She had no idea that the man watching her from the shadows would soon change her life forever. That night, Emma curled up in a thin blanket, holding Ethan and Liam close. Margaret's words echoed in her mind. If the train station was really going to be torn down, they would have nowhere left to go. Rain started to fall, the cold wind seeping through the cracks of the old building. Ethan nestled deeper into her embrace, his body burning with fever. "Mom, I'm cold," Liam's weak voice whispered. Panic surged through Emma. She touched their foreheads. Both of them were burning up. What was she going to do? Before she could think of a plan, a harsh beam of light swept across their corner. "You can't stay here," the security guard announced. "The station closes in 10 minutes. "Please, just one night," Emma begged, clutching her sons tighter. "They have fevers and it's raining outside." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but if you don't leave, I'll have to call the police." Emma's heart pounded. She gripped her children, desperate. But before she could say another word, a deep voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem?" Emma looked up, and there he was, the man in the dark suit she had seen before, Nathan Carter. "Mr. Carter," the guard hesitated. "This woman and her kids have been sleeping here. I was just enforcing the rules. Let them stay." "But sir, I'll take responsibility." The guard hesitated before giving a short nod and walking away. For a few moments, only Emma and Nathan remained, their eyes locking in the dim light of the station. She didn't know why he was helping her, but she had no other choice. Holding her sons tightly, she ignored the piercing gaze of Nathan Carter, the man who, by tomorrow, could destroy the only place she had left to call home. Yet, as he stood there watching, something about her resilience, her unwavering determination to protect her children, made him pause. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the dusty station windows, Emma opened her eyes, feeling the steady breaths of her children against her chest. They had made it through another night. She carefully pulled the thin blanket around Ethan and Liam before getting up. As she looked up, her breath caught. Nathan Carter was standing nearby, hands in his pockets, silently watching. A wave of unease crept through her. Why was he still here? Emma turned away, pretending not to notice, but all day, as she helped Margaret sell flowers, she could feel his gaze on her from a distance. Then, one afternoon, as she rearranged the bouquets, a deep voice spoke, right in front of her. "Can I buy a bouquet?" She froze. Nathan Carter. But today, he wasn't in his usual suit. His sleeves were rolled up, making him look less intimidating. "Which one?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "The one you're holding?" Emma glanced down. She was holding a bouquet of pure white roses. She handed them to him, her hands slightly trembling as she took the money. "Keep the change," Nathan said, but instead of walking away, he studied her for a moment. "For your kids." Before she could respond, he turned and disappeared into the bustling crowd. Margaret chuckled, shaking her head knowingly. "This is the first time I've seen him buy flowers," she murmured. "And he's been coming around more often lately." Emma didn't know what it meant. But she knew one thing. Nathan Carter wasn't the type to help someone without a reason. The only question was, why did he care? In the days that followed, Emma realized something. Nathan Carter wasn't just a stranger who had helped her by chance. He showed up more often. He never said much, but he was always nearby. And each time, he left something behind. A bouquet he bought for far more than it was worth. A sandwich accidentally left near where Ethan and Liam were playing. Emma tried not to think too much about it. But one afternoon, while she was selling flowers with Margaret, a group of men in suits arrived at the station. "Look," Margaret whispered. "They seem to be surveying the area." Emma followed her gaze, and her heart sank when she saw Nathan among them. Was he really planning to tear down the station? As the afternoon wore on, Nathan returned to the flower stand. But this time, he didn't just buy flowers. "Dinner with me," he said, his tone calm, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Emma stiffened. "Why?" "Because you and your kids deserve a real meal." She hesitated. She didn't want his pity. But when she looked at Ethan and Liam, two little boys who had grown used to modest meals, she knew she couldn't refuse. "All right," she murmured. Nathan nodded slightly, and Emma had no idea that this dinner would change everything. Dinner with Nathan was warmer than Emma had expected. It wasn't a fancy restaurant, but a small family diner where the soft yellow lights and the smell of fresh food made her feel like, for the first time in forever, she could breathe. Ethan and Liam were thrilled with their spaghetti, and Nathan, though clearly out of place in such a casual setting, patiently engaged with them. For the first time in months, Emma felt normal. Dinner with Nathan was something Emma hadn't expected. He didn't just offer them a meal, he took the time to listen, to talk, to genuinely care. "What did you used to dream about?" Nathan asked as the boys happily ate their dessert. Emma traced the rim of her coffee cup, hesitating before she smiled softly. "I wanted to open a ballet academy," she admitted. "A place for kids who couldn't afford lessons but still wanted to dance." "Then why didn't you?" Emma let out a quiet sigh. "Because life doesn't always give us chances." Nathan didn't reply, but something flickered in his eyes. As time passed, Nathan's presence in Emma's life was no longer an intrusion. At first, she resented how he always seemed to be nearby, but slowly she realized he never pushed, never pitied. He was simply there when Ethan and Liam needed a warm meal, when she needed an adult to talk to, when the cold nights made her want to give up. His steady gaze reminded her to keep going. One rainy afternoon, Emma hurried to pack up the flowers when Nathan appeared, holding 2 small coats. "They'll keep the boys warm," he said, setting them down without waiting for her permission. Emma looked at the coats, then at him. Her heart stirred with something she had tried to ignore. They talked more after that. Conversations about the past, about dreams, about things neither had shared with anyone else. "If you had the chance, would you still open your ballet academy?" Nathan asked one evening. Emma smiled, and for the first time, her eyes sparkled with something beyond survival. "Always." Nathan leaned forward, his voice softer now. "Then, let's make that happen." Emma blinked. "What?" "I have resources, you have talent. This doesn't have to stay a dream." Nathan didn't respond, but an idea was already forming in his mind. That night, as Emma read a bedtime story to her sons, Nathan sat nearby, quietly watching. He had once thought he didn't belong in their world, but maybe he had been wrong. And just when everything was starting to make sense, Victoria appeared. "Do you really think Nathan cares about you?" Her icy voice shattered Emma's thoughts. "This is just charity, and like any game, it will end soon." Emma wanted to believe she was wrong. But then she overheard Nathan speaking to his assistant. "I can't keep doing this forever. We need to wrap this up soon." The words struck like a knife, slicing through the fragile trust she had only just begun to build. Emma made her decision. She couldn't let herself and her children become a burden, just waiting to be cast aside. But as she packed their few belongings, a part of her hesitated. Nathan had been different. He had made her feel safe. And yet, she had been wrong before. Emma left without a word. Nathan didn't realize it at first, but when he returned to the train station that night and saw that Emma and the boys were gone, a strange feeling crept into his chest. He found Margaret. "Where is she?" The old woman shook her head, her voice disapproving. "You should let her be." But Nathan couldn't accept that. He spent hours combing through the streets near the station, asking homeless people, street vendors, anyone, "Have you seen a woman with 2 blonde-haired boys?" Everyone shook their heads. No one knew. The following days were a nightmare. Nathan couldn't focus on work, couldn't sleep. One question haunted him. Where is she? Then came the call from the hospital. "Mr. Carter, this is Central Hospital. We have 2 boys admitted with severe pneumonia. Your name is listed as their emergency contact." Nathan's heart clenched. "Ethan and Liam?" "Yes, their mother is here too." He didn't wait to hear more. He grabbed his keys and drove like a madman to the hospital. For the first time in his life, Nathan realized something. If he lost them, he would have nothing left. When Nathan stepped into the hospital room, the first thing he saw was Emma, exhausted, frail, but still holding on to Ethan and Liam's hands. She looked up as he approached, her eyes swollen from worry and sleepless nights. "Why didn't you call me?" Nathan's voice was hoarse. Emma turned away. "You were busy." "No, Emma." He stepped closer, kneeling beside her. "I was never too busy for you and the boys." She said nothing, but the walls she had built around herself began to crack. Nathan sighed, pulling out his phone and handing it to her. "This is my new project. The station won't be torn down. It'll be turned into a community center, and I want you to be part of it." Emma looked at the designs. Right in the heart of it was a ballet academy. "But why?" she whispered. Nathan took her hand. "Because you taught me something, that building doesn't always mean destroying, and because I can't lose you." Tears filled her eyes as she squeezed his hand. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe again. 2 years later, the Hope Center finally opened its doors. The once forgotten train station had been transformed into a vibrant community hub, a ballet academy, a small library, shops that provided jobs for the homeless. On stage at the grand opening, Emma stood in a simple white dress, holding her son's hands as they stepped into the spotlight. Nathan watched from below, silent pride shining in his eyes. As the first notes of music played, Ethan and Liam began their performance. 2 boys who once had nothing, now shining on stage. Emma glanced at Nathan. She had once believed that miracles didn't exist. But now she knew that sometimes miracles weren't things that fell from the sky. They were things people created for each other. Nathan stepped onto the stage, taking her hand in his. "Are you ready for the next chapter?" Emma smiled, squeezing his hand. "Always." And as the applause echoed through the hall, she knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. After the grand opening, as the crowd slowly dispersed, Nathan gently pulled Emma aside. "There's one more thing I haven't said." Before she could respond, he knelt down and pulled out a small velvet box. Ethan and Liam gasped. "Mom, he's doing the thing princes do in fairy tales." Emma covered her mouth, tears welling up as Nathan opened the box to reveal a simple yet elegant ring. "Emma, you taught me what it truly means to build something lasting, not with bricks and steel, but with love. You gave me a reason to believe in things I never thought possible. Let's build a family together, forever." Emma's breath hitched. For so long she had feared hoping for too much. But looking into Nathan's eyes, she saw something unshakable, something she had been missing her entire life. "A home." Emma let out a watery laugh. "Well, what do you boys think?" she asked Ethan and Liam. The twins immediately tackled Nathan in a hug. "Yes," Ethan shouted. "We always wanted you to be our dad," Liam added, squeezing him tighter. Emma looked at them, her heart overflowing. She reached down, placing her hand over Nathan's. "Yes," she whispered, "always." 1 month later, under a golden afternoon sky, Emma walked down the aisle in a flowing white dress toward the man who had turned her sorrow into a new beginning. And as Nathan kissed her amidst the cheers of their friends and family, Emma knew, at last, they were a family. Forever. The mahogany-paneled office was intimidating, a testament to wealth and meticulous taste. Ryan Caldwell sat in his motorized wheelchair behind a sleek desk, his sharp eyes fixed on the resume in front of him. "I need a caregiver, Miss Simmons, not a savior," he said coldly, his voice slicing through the tense atmosphere. Leah Simmons, standing across from him, forced herself to hold his gaze. Her fingers were clenched beneath the table, her knuckles white as she struggled to keep her voice steady. Doubt flickered briefly in her mind, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the opportunity this job could provide for her son. "With all due respect, Mr. Caldwell, I'm not here to save anyone. I'm here because I'm good at my job, and you pay well." A flicker of surprise crossed Ryan's face, quickly masked by his usual detached demeanor. He slid the resume across the desk with practiced ease. "Your qualifications are impressive, but why did you leave St. Mary's Rehabilitation Center 6 months ago?" "The night shifts didn't align with raising my son," Leah replied evenly, though she felt her cheeks flush. "Ethan is 9. He needs me present, not just awake." Ryan's fingers drummed on the armrest of his wheelchair, the only sign of movement below his chest. "This position requires living on site 5 days a week. What about your son?" "Ethan would stay with me during school breaks," she said firmly. "Otherwise, he'll split time between here and my mother's house, which is closer to his school." Ryan studied her, his expression unreadable. Finally, he leaned back, his tone a mix of challenge and resignation. "Fine. You start Monday. Don't make me regret this, Ms. Simmons." Leah nodded, her heart pounding despite her calm exterior. As she left the room, Ryan's voice stopped her one last time. "Tell your son the library here has an excellent collection of engineering books. He might find them useful when he visits." Leah allowed herself a small smile as she stepped out. She had the job. Now, she just needed to convince herself she could handle whatever came next. The small apartment kitchen felt even more cramped than usual as Leah stirred a pot of pasta, the flickering overhead light casting uneven shadows. Across the table, Ethan sat with a scowl, pushing peas around his plate. "Why can't you just come home every night?" His voice wavered, breaking Leah's resolve for a brief moment. "Because Mr. Caldwell needs 24-hour care, sweetie," she said gently, reaching over to still his restless hands. "This job pays enough for us to finally get you into that robotics program you've been dreaming about." Ethan's eyes lit up momentarily before dimming again. "The one with the coding labs?" "That's the one," Leah forced a smile, even as the thought of the camp's $3,000 price tag made her stomach clench. "And maybe piano lessons too, if you still want them." He sighed, slumping back in his chair. "But I'll only see you on weekends." "During school breaks you'll come stay with me," Leah added quickly. "The house has a huge library, even better than your school's. You'll love it." Ethan's face scrunched in thought. "Better than the school library?" "Much better." Leah leaned forward, her voice softening. "And I've already talked to Grandma. She's letting you set up your own space in her craft room." "The one with the creepy doll collection?" Ethan wrinkled his nose, finally cracking a small smile. "We'll move them somewhere else," Leah said, laughing despite herself. She stood to clear the dishes, but Ethan grabbed her hand. "Mom, promise you won't forget about me when you're taking care of him." The words hit her like a blow. Leah knelt beside him, meeting his serious gaze. "Listen to me, Ethan. Everything I do is for you. This job is no different. You are my priority, always." Ethan hesitated before whispering, "Okay." Later, as Leah sat at the kitchen table counting bills, she glanced at the acceptance letter from Ryan's estate. The numbers promised a better future, but the cost felt heavier than she anticipated. Leah adjusted her uniform, mentally running through Ryan's care plan for the day. It was her first morning on the job, and she wasn't about to make a single mistake. As she approached Ryan's master bathroom, she could feel the tension in the air. "I can manage the shirt," Ryan muttered tersely, his fingers fumbling with the buttons of his tailored dress shirt. Leah stepped back slightly, keeping her tone calm. "Of course. I'll prepare your shower items." The bathroom was a masterpiece of modern accessibility. Sleek grab bars that doubled as art, a seamless shower chair, and state-of-the-art equipment designed to blend functionality with elegance. Every detail whispered of wealth and an unwavering need for independence. "The water temperature should be 98 degrees, Ryan began, his voice clipped. "Medium pressure, pulse setting on the handheld showerhead," Leah interrupted, reading directly from his care plan. "And the shampoo for sensitive skin to prevent irritation. I've got it." Ryan's hand stilled as he looked up at her, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. "You actually read the entire care plan?" "Twice," Leah replied, stepping toward the shower. "It's my job." Ryan's lips tightened, but he didn't argue. "I'll transfer myself to the shower chair." Leah nodded, watching carefully as he positioned his wheelchair and locked the brakes. His upper body strength was impressive, a testament to his rigorous physical therapy routine. But halfway through the transfer, his grip slipped. Without hesitation, Leah stepped in, providing just enough support to steady him. Their eyes met briefly, his filled with frustration and a glimmer of embarrassment, hers calm and unwavering. "Good catch," Ryan said quietly, settling into the shower chair. "Good technique," Leah replied, stepping back to give him space. "Though your left grip seemed weaker, have you been overcompensating with your right side?" Ryan looked at her, startled. "How did you—" 8 years of experience," she said with a small shrug. "And your left deltoid is slightly less developed. We should incorporate targeted exercises into your PT routine." For the first time, Ryan's lips quirked into the faintest hint of a smile. "Are you always this observant?" "Only when I'm being paid to be," Leah shot back, handing him the handheld showerhead. "Now, would you like to start with the shampoo, or should I remind you of that part of your care plan too?" By the time they finished, a tentative rhythm had been established. Ryan accepted her assistance with less resistance, and Leah maintained her professionalism, ensuring his dignity remained intact. As she helped him adjust his tie before his first video conference of the day, Ryan broke the silence. "Mrs. Henderson usually brings coffee halfway through the meeting." "I know," Leah replied. "Page 17 of the care plan. But I make better coffee, and you prefer it stronger." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "How do you know that?" "The residue in your coffee maker," she said simply, moving toward the door. "Observing is part of my job." As the door closed behind her, Leah heard something unexpected, a quiet chuckle. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The steady hum of Ryan's motorized wheelchair filled the study as he reviewed blueprints on his tablet. Leah stood nearby, organizing his schedule when her phone buzzed. She sighed, reading the message. "Mom, no sitter. What do I do?" Minutes later, Leah entered the study with a sheepish look, followed by Ethan, clutching his backpack. "Mr. Caldwell, I apologize. My sitter canceled last minute and I didn't have another option." Ryan glanced up, his eyes narrowing slightly at the boy. "Does he follow instructions as well as you do?" "I try," Ethan piped up before Leah could respond. Ryan's gaze lingered on the boy's curious eyes, then shifted back to Leah. "He stays out of the way, and quiet." "Yes, sir," Ethan promised eagerly. As Leah set Ethan up in the library with his homework, Ryan continued working. But it wasn't long before the boy wandered back into the study, his wide eyes fixed on Ryan's wheelchair. "Is that a Permobil F5? Ethan blurted out, his excitement breaking the silence. Ryan looked up, momentarily caught off guard. "It is. How do you know that?" "I did my science project on assistive technologies last year," Ethan explained, stepping closer. "Does it really have memory seating positions? Can you control it with your phone? What's the battery life like?" Leah started to intervene, but Ryan held up a hand, intrigued by the boy's enthusiasm. "Would you like to see how it works?" Ethan's face lit up. "Really? Mom, can I?" Leah hesitated, glancing between her son and Ryan, whose usually guarded expression had softened. 30 minutes, she relented. Then back to homework. For the next half hour, Ryan gave Ethan a detailed demonstration of the wheelchair's features. He explained the controls, the customizable settings, and even the standing function that allowed him to reach higher shelves. Ethan hung on every word, asking questions that Ryan answered with surprising patience. "So, could someone hack it?" Ethan asked, his curiosity unfiltered. Leah's voice shot out. "Ethan!" But Ryan chuckled, a rare sound Leah hadn't expected. "Technically, yes, though it would void the warranty." Ethan grinned. "Cool. Can I program it to do something custom?" "Homework first," Leah said firmly, trying to suppress a smile. Ryan nodded in agreement. "The library computer has simulation software. You can use it during your next visit, if your mother approves." Ethan's eyes lit up again and he turned to Leah. "Mom, please?" "We'll see," Leah replied, unable to resist his hopeful expression. Later, as Leah brought Ryan his coffee, she hesitated before speaking. "Thank you for being kind to him. He's a remarkable kid," Ryan said simply, sipping his coffee. "He doesn't see the chair as a limitation, just technology to be explored. It's refreshing." Leah straightened a stack of papers on his desk, hiding her smile. "He sees things differently. Always has." Ryan glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "Like mother, like son." It started as a routine security check. Leah was inspecting the emergency exits when she noticed a door slightly ajar at the end of the hallway. It wasn't on the floor plans she'd reviewed, and curiosity got the better of her. The door opened easily, revealing a room that seemed frozen in time. Black and white sketches of cityscapes and blueprints lined the walls. The centerpiece was a large drafting table, covered in half-finished designs and expensive tools, all coated in a thin layer of dust. "You shouldn't be in here." Ryan's sharp voice made Leah jump. She turned to see him in the doorway, his knuckles white as they gripped the armrests of his wheelchair. "I'm sorry," Leah said quickly. "It wasn't on the floor plan, and I thought it might be a safety issue." "It's not part of your responsibilities," he snapped. "Close the door." Leah hesitated, her eyes drawn back to the room. "This was your studio, wasn't it?" "It's irrelevant," Ryan said coldly, wheeling forward to block her view. "The room needs to be cleared out." "Why?" she asked softly, refusing to back down. His jaw tightened. "Because I can't use the equipment anymore? Or had you failed to notice my condition?" Leah folded her arms, standing her ground. "I noticed the modified drafting tools, the adjusted grips, the motorized table. Someone went to great lengths to make this space accessible. Did you really stop using it because you couldn't? Or because it was harder?" Ryan laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. "What exactly do you think you're doing, Ms. Simmons?" "My job," Leah replied, meeting his gaze, "which includes understanding why my employer has locked away part of himself." Silence hung between them, thick and charged. Finally, Ryan wheeled closer, his voice low and sharp. "You want to know why? Because every time I sit at that table, my hands shake. Because the designs I use to create now take me twice as long. Because every attempt reminds me of what I've lost." Leah stepped forward, her voice steady. "And every time you lock that door, you remind yourself of what you've given up." His eyes blazed with anger, but he didn't respond. Leah gestured to the room. "You once fought to adapt this space. Why not fight to use it? No one's asking you to be the same as before, Ryan. Just to try." He stared at her for a long moment before speaking quietly, almost to himself. "It's not the same." "No," Leah agreed. "But different doesn't mean worse. It just means finding a new way to create." Ryan didn't respond as Leah stepped past him, leaving the door open. "In case you decide to revisit it," she said over her shoulder. As she walked away, she thought she heard him murmur, "Thank you." She didn't turn around, deciding some victories didn't need acknowledgement. The sharp beep of the thermometer broke the silence of the dimly lit room. Leah's heart sank as the screen displayed 103.2 DHF. Ryan lay motionless in his bed, his face pale and covered in sweat, his breathing labored. She reached for her phone, dialing the emergency line with practiced urgency. "Yes." "This is Leah Simmons, caregiver for Ryan Caldwell. His fever spiked to 103, his breathing is shallow and he's barely responsive. We need an ambulance immediately." After ending the call, Leah pressed a cool cloth to Ryan's forehead, murmuring softly, "Stay with me, Ryan. Help is on the way." His eyelids fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. "Leah?" he mumbled, his voice weak. "I'm here," she whispered, her fingers brushing his damp hair away from his face. "Don't leave." His voice cracked, barely audible, but the desperation in it was undeniable. Leah froze for a moment as the words hit her like a blow. His hand, trembling and weak, found hers, holding on as if afraid she might vanish. "I won't," she promised, her voice breaking slightly. For the next hour, Leah hovered at his side, her training taking over. She monitored his vitals, adjusted his blankets, and whispered reassurances. But underneath her professional focus, Her heart pounded with emotions she couldn't quite name. When the paramedics arrived, Leah rattled off Ryan's medical history and current symptoms, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "I'll follow in my car," she told them as they prepared to transport him. It wasn't until she sat alone in the hospital waiting room, her hands trembling in her lap, that the realization hit her. Ryan's whispered plea, his vulnerability, and her own overwhelming need to stay by his side. This wasn't just duty anymore. Somewhere along the way, she had stopped seeing him as just her patient. She cared about him, deeply. When the doctor finally emerged to say Ryan was stable, Leah let out a shaky breath, her chest tightening with relief. She stepped into his hospital room, and as she sat by his bed, her hand instinctively reached for his. "I'm not going anywhere," she murmured, the truth of her words sinking in. The first rays of dawn filtered through the hospital blinds as Leah stirred in her chair, her fingers still entwined with Ryan's. His breathing had steadied during the night, and the fever had finally broken. Ryan stirred, his eyes fluttering open to find Leah at his side. For a moment he seemed disoriented, then his gaze softened. "You stayed," he murmured, his voice hoarse. Leah smiled faintly, brushing her hair back from her tired face. "Of course I did. I told you I wouldn't leave." Ryan studied her, his expression unreadable. "You've done more than anyone else ever has. You could have walked away last night. Why didn't you?" Leah hesitated, the truth hovering on her lips. "Because I care," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan's hand tightened slightly around hers. "You don't have to take this on, Leah. I know what I am. A burden." Her eyes flashed, and she leaned closer. "You're not a burden, Ryan. You're stubborn and frustrating, yes, but you're also brilliant, kind, and capable of more than you give yourself credit for." His lips quirked into the faintest of smiles. "I'm not sure if that's a compliment or a reprimand." "It's both," she replied with a soft laugh. The door opened, and a nurse entered, breaking the moment. Leah stood, reluctantly letting go of his hand. "I'll give them some space to check on you." As she turned to leave, Ryan's voice stopped her. "Leah." She turned back, meeting his gaze. "I'm glad you stayed." Leah's heart fluttered, but she managed a steady smile. "Me too." As she walked down the hospital corridor, the realization settled over her fully. She didn't just care about Ryan. She was falling for him. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of where that path might lead. The sun poured warmly over the sprawling estate as Ryan sat on the patio, his wheelchair angled toward the garden. The early spring blossoms danced in the gentle breeze, their vibrant colors reflecting the changes he felt within himself. Leah emerged from the house, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. She handed one to Ryan before settling into the chair beside him. "You're getting better at pacing yourself," she teased, gesturing toward the empty sketch pad on the table. Ryan chuckled, a sound that had become more frequent since his return from the hospital. "I had a good motivator," he replied, his eyes softening as they met hers. Leah smiled, sipping her coffee. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken words. "I've been thinking," Ryan began, his tone suddenly serious. Leah raised an eyebrow. "That's usually dangerous." He smirked, but quickly grew earnest. "You've given me more than I ever thought I'd have again, Leah. A reason to try, a reason to push past what I thought were limits. You've done so much for me." Leah set her mug down, sensing the weight of his words. "Ryan, you've done just as much for yourself. You've rebuilt your life, your work, your passion. It's all you." "It's not just me," he said, shaking his head slightly. "It's you. And Ethan." Leah blinked, startled as Ryan shifted slightly in his wheelchair, his hand disappearing into his pocket. When he pulled out a small velvet box, her breath caught. "Ryan," her voice trailed off as he opened it, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "I know I'm not the easiest person to deal with," he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his expression. "But I also know that I don't want to spend another day without you, or Ethan. I want us to be a family, Leah." Her breath caught as she stared at him, her heart pounding. "I'm asking you to marry me," Ryan continued, his gaze unwavering. "To bring Ethan here so we can make this house a home. For all of us." Tears welled in Leah's eyes as she laughed softly, shaking her head. "You really don't do anything halfway, do you?" "Not when it comes to you," he replied, his voice warm. Leah stood, stepping closer to him. She took the ring from the box, her hands trembling slightly as she slipped it onto her finger. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Ryan." Ryan exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, his smile brighter than she had ever seen. Leah leaned down, wrapping her arms around him as their foreheads touched. "Ethan's going to love this," she said with a tearful laugh. Ryan smirked. "I'm more worried about whether he'll approve of my science trivia skills." Leah laughed, brushing her lips against his. "We'll make it work. Together." As the garden blooms swayed in the wind, the promise of a new chapter unfolded. A family born not out of perfection, but out of love, resilience, and the courage to build something beautiful together.
It was yet another Tuesday evening in Manhattan, and Thad Blackwood, made his way through the polished marble floors of Le Jordan, a restaurant that stood as one of the most exclusive spots in the Upper East Side, the sound of his Italian leather shoes echoing in the elegant atmosphere. By the age of 33, he had become familiar with the experience of eating alone, discovering an unusual solace in the isolation that accompanied his achievements. The maitre d' instantly recognized him. After all, he had been a regular every Tuesday for the past 3 years, ever since he assumed the role of CEO at Blackwood Technologies. "Your regular table, Mr. Blackwood?" Marcel, the maitre d', waved with refined grace toward the corner table that offered a view of Central Park. The late autumn sunset draped the sky in vivid oranges and purples, a sight that would set most back a month's wages to savor alongside their meal. "Thanks, Marcel." Thad straightened his tailored charcoal suit jacket, a subtle gesture born from the tension of board meetings. The eatery buzzed softly with hushed exchanges and the delicate sound of elegant porcelain meeting one another, a harmonious blend of luxury and sophistication that often allowed him to relax after grueling 14-hour workdays. A young sommelier came forward with the wine list, but Thad dismissed it with a wave of his hand. The typical Bordeaux Thomas. He had familiarized himself with the names of every staff member present. Another habit his father had ingrained in him before he passed away and left him the company. "Success is forged through connections, my boy," he had remarked, "even those that appear trivial." As Thomas stepped away to get the wine, Thad's fingers wandered over the edge of his phone screen, lost in thought. 3 missed calls from his mother. Most likely yet another effort to match him with someone's daughter. She had never fully absolved him for allowing Autumn to fade away 9 years prior. The recollection of Autumn's brilliance lingered like a paper cut, tiny yet piercing, causing a sting at the most unexpected moments. Just as he was poised to dive into his emails, something unexpected drew his attention. A recognizable laugh that sparked a thrill within him. It was a laugh that lingered in his memories, the sort that would rouse him from slumber on leisurely Sunday mornings. His head turned without thought toward the sound, and time itself appeared to freeze in that moment. Autumn was being led to a table across the restaurant. Her copper hair now framed her shoulders in elegant waves, yet she retained that same graceful movement that had initially captivated him at their college graduation. Her deep green dress accentuated her eyes, causing them to sparkle even from afar. Yet, it was not merely her presence that caused his breath to hitch in his throat. Strolling alongside her, a trio of identical little girls mirrored her every move, creating a captivating scene. Each possessed the warm hues of autumn, their copper hair shimmering in the light, and as they approached, he could discern the familiar steel gray of his own eyes. They appeared to be approximately 9 years of age. The calculations were straightforward. His hand clutched the edge of the table with such intensity that his knuckles blanched to a stark white. One of the girls held a book close, her gaze fixed downward as she moved, almost colliding with a waiter. Another was scanning the restaurant with keen interest, absorbing every detail as if she were committing it to memory for future reference. The third strode with impeccable posture, her chin elevated in a manner that sharply evoked memories of his own mother for Thad. He stood still, captivated, as they took their seats at a table merely 2 sections from his own, near enough to catch fragments of their dialogue, so near that it was inevitable for Autumn to eventually take notice of him. Thomas came back with the wine, yet Thad hardly acknowledged him. His thoughts surged with recollections, the last glimpse of Autumn, their last dispute over his decision to lead the company rather than embark on their joint venture, and how she vanished without a word in the aftermath. He sought her out, but she had altered her number, relocated, and her family had fortified their defenses. At that moment, understanding dawned upon him. One of the girls, the inquisitive one, was already gazing in his direction, her head tilted slightly as if attempting to unravel a mystery. He could see his own emotions reflected in her face, and it sent his heart racing. The burden of all he had overlooked, all the unknowns that loomed before him, felt as if it might overwhelm him entirely. Is it time for him to rise and depart? Ought he to face her? Ought he to feign ignorance of their presence? 9 years of business training, of making million-dollar decisions in seconds, and none of it had equipped him for this moment. In that moment, Autumn lifted its gaze, and their eyes locked across the restaurant. The hue faded from her complexion, and the menu she clutched fell from her grasp, clattering against the delicate china. For what seemed like an endless stretch of time, neither of them stirred. The lively restaurant began to blur into the background, with only the pounding of Thad's heartbeat echoing in his ears. The inquisitive girl, he found himself regarding her as his own, pulled at Autumn's sleeve and murmured something that jolted her back to the present moment. "Mom, why does that man resemble the image in your memory box?" The girl's voice reached Thad, each word striking like a hammer against the meticulously crafted barrier he had erected to shield his past. Autumn swiftly composed herself, her years of experience as a high school drama teacher shining through in her ability to regain her poise. "Skylar, darling, let's concentrate on selecting your dinner." Yet, her hands quivered ever so slightly as she retrieved the fallen menu, and Thad noticed the quick rise and fall of her chest, a habit she'd always exhibited when feeling anxious. The avid reader's daughter glanced up from her book. He could now perceive it as a distortion in time, and examined him with a focus that evoked the sensation of gazing into a mirror. The third girl, the one with impeccable posture, leaned in to share a secret with her sisters, prompting a chorus of giggles, while their mother's expression stayed taut. Thad's wine remained undisturbed, droplets of condensation racing down the glass, mirroring the sweat that gathered on his palms. A myriad of questions surged through his thoughts. Why did she keep it from him? How could she possibly hide this from him? What were those names? Were they aware of anything regarding him? The burden of 9 years without bedtime stories and first days of school weighed heavily on his heart. His phone vibrated, yet another call from his mother. If she only realized she had become a grandmother to triplets. The notion almost brought a chuckle, highlighting the sheer ridiculousness of the situation. His mother, who had been nagging him about grandchildren for years, had 3 she had never met. With his characteristic flair, Marcel made his way to Autumn's table, and Thad could catch the sound of his greeting. "Ah, Miss Sterling, it's a pleasure to see you again. And the young women, Skylar, Phoenix, and River. What a delight it is to reunite with all of you once more. Were they frequent visitors here? How had he never encountered them before?" The names resonated in his mind: Skylar, Phoenix, River. He aligned them with his observations. Skylar seemed to be the inquisitive one, Phoenix the intellectual, and River the refined lady. The names were stunning, precisely the sort of distinctive and significant selections he would have anticipated from Autumn. She had always cherished the connection between nature and humanity, forever envisioning names that conveyed tales. "Mom," Phoenix's voice was gentler than Skylar's but still distinct. "Isn't that the man from your previous business plan? Is it the one from the coffee shop picture?" Autumn's cheeks warmed, and Thad's thoughts raced back to the dream they had woven together. A series of imaginative coffee shops named Sterling Black, merging her artistic flair with his entrepreneurial acumen. The scheme they had tirelessly refined through sleepless nights, the aspiration that had faded when he opted to inherit his father's business instead. River, embodying her graceful composure, arranged her silverware and articulated her thoughts with deliberate precision. "Mother, I think it would be rather rude to gawk, although he certainly has a remarkable likeness." "Girls," Autumn interjected, her voice a blend of tension and softness. "Please, let's savor our celebration dinner together." Festivity? Thad's thoughts surged with intensity. What was the occasion for their celebration? Had he forgotten their special day? What is one of their accomplishments? How many other festivities had he overlooked? He realized he was standing there, having not actively chosen to be in that position. His legs felt stiff as he took the first step toward their table. He noticed the surprise in Autumn's eyes, her hand moving reflexively as if to shield their daughters. Thomas materialized beside him. "Excuse me, sir? Is everything okay with the wine?" Thad hardly registered his words. 9 years of board meetings had instilled in him the ability to navigate with intention, even as chaos swirled around him. Every step toward their table was akin to wading through thick, heavy water, yet he persevered. He needed to find out. He needed to grasp the situation. The girls observed his approach with a mix of reactions. Skylar's eager curiosity, Phoenix's sharp evaluation peeking over her book, and River's impeccably measured observation. 3 distinct reflections of his own visage stared back at him, intertwined with Autumn's traits in a manner that stirred a deep ache within his heart. Autumn rose to her feet as he approached their table, positioning herself subtly in front of the girls in a naturally defensive manner. Upon closer inspection, he noticed that time had treated her well. She appeared even more stunning than he recalled, with delicate laugh lines framing her eyes that hinted at happiness he had not shared. "Thad," she murmured, her voice a soft melody that still held the charm capable of bringing a smile to his face each morning. Now it constricted his chest with the essence of autumn, as he struggled to recognize his own voice, which felt alien to him. Then, unable to restrain himself, he gazed at each of the girls in succession. And Skylar, Phoenix, and River. The stillness that ensued was overwhelming. Skylar was the first to shatter the silence, leaning in with her elbows resting on the table, undeterred by River's disapproving gaze. "Ah, so you are the one. The gentleman from the cafe cultivates. Mom keeps them close to her." "Skylar," Autumn cautioned, though her voice quivered just a bit. The restaurant surrounding them carried on with its graceful choreography of servers and hushed dialogues, unaware of the emotional upheaval unfolding at their table. "Please," Thad said, his voice thick with emotion. "May I sit?" He motioned toward the vacant chair at their table, his gaze fixed intently on Autumn's face. She paused for a moment, then offered a slight nod, retreating into her own seat. Phoenix gently placed a bookmark in her book and set it down with care, her gray eyes, his eyes, examining him with a fervor that constricted his throat. "Mother mentioned that you excel in business," stating it quite plainly. "She incorporates your company's success as a prime example in her economics class." Thad's eyebrows arched in surprise as he gazed at Autumn. "Class on economics?" A delicate flush tinted her cheeks. "I currently instruct business and drama at Wellington Prep. The students tend to engage effectively with practical examples from the real world." River straightened up even more, as if that were achievable. "Mother is the most youthful department head in their history. She has achieved a great deal." Her voice carried a fierce sense of guardianship that sent a pang through Thad's heart. These girls had been guided to watch over their mother, to stand as her protectors, a person distinct from him. He spoke gently, recalling how Autumn had consistently been the brightest mind in any gathering, despite her never showing it. "Your talent for imparting knowledge has always been remarkable. To assist individuals in recognizing their capabilities. Just as she did with you?" Skylar inquired with a sense of naivety, yet the way Autumn's complexion drained at the question revealed a deeper truth. Memories surged forth. The late nights spent together in autumn, guiding him through his business finals, her insightful ideas during his internship presentations, and the constant encouragement to expand his horizons and dream with greater ambition, until he opted for the secure route rather than pursuing their collective aspiration. Indeed, he responded truthfully, his gaze fixed on Autumn. Precisely in that manner. A server made his way to their table, pausing at the palpable tension in the air, before finally clearing his throat. "Should I include another setting, Ms. Sterling?" Before Autumn had a chance to reply, River interjected with impeccable social finesse. "Absolutely, that sounds great. Today, we gather to honor our academic accomplishments, and it feels fitting to have everyone who is interested in attendance." She stressed the final words in a manner that left Thad pondering just how much these girls were aware of him. He inquired, taking advantage of the opportunity to discuss academic accomplishments. Phoenix nodded, a subtle smile dancing on her lips. "We were all honored with special recognition. I triumphed at the Regional Science Fair with my project focused on sustainable urban farming. I landed the lead in the school play," Skylar exclaimed, practically bouncing in her seat. "I'm taking on the role of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. And I," River declared with a sense of noble pride, "was chosen as the youngest student body president in the school's history." Thad experienced a gut-wrenching sensation, as if he had been struck hard in the abdomen. They were incredibly skilled, remarkably intelligent, and reflected aspects of both him and Autumn in unique ways. His gaze seared with intensity as he beheld Autumn. "They are truly remarkable," he murmured. She nodded gently, then with a touch of firmness in her tone, remarked that they had possessed all that was necessary. The silence was palpable, a weighty presence that conveyed their independence from you. Yet, gazing upon these three extraordinary young women, his daughters, Thad found himself questioning the validity of that belief now. The waiter came back with the place settings, and as he meticulously arranged them, Thad caught sight of something that sent a chill down his spine. On Phoenix's book rested a well-known leather bookmark, one he had gifted Autumn long ago, inscribed with their cherished quote, "Certain infinities surpass others in magnitude." She held on to it. Throughout all these years, she held on to it. And now their daughter was utilizing it, likely unaware of its importance. How many other fragments of him had Autumn intricately intertwined into their daughter's existence without their awareness? "Mr. Blackwood," River interjected with a sense of formality, drawing him back from his reverie. "Since you're partaking in our celebratory dinner, might you be interested in hearing about our upcoming plans as well? Our approach to middle school has been notably strategic. Junior high." The words struck him with the weight of boulders. His daughters were envisioning their futures while he was encountering them for the very first time. The burden of all he had overlooked bore down on him, looming large and perilous, as if it might engulf him entirely. The waiter approached with menus, momentarily easing the tension in the air. Thad observed how each girl approached the menu in her own unique way. Phoenix was methodical, weighing her options with precision. Skylar radiated excitement as she flipped through the pages, and River, though too young to order from the wine list, scrutinized it with a thoughtful intensity. "The cocoa vin is excellent here," Thad remarked instinctively, then recognized that he was offering menu recommendations to his own daughters as though they were colleagues in a meeting. The ridiculousness of the scenario loomed large, ready to engulf him. "That's Mom's favorite," Skylar remarked with enthusiasm. "She consistently chooses it for special occasions." She paused, tilting her head thoughtfully. "Have you heard about that? Is that the reason you choose it as well?" Autumn's grip on her water glass grew firmer. "Skylar, keep in mind our conversation regarding personal inquiries?" "But Mom," Skylar argued, "you always say that understanding is strength. It appears that Mr. Blackwood possesses quite a bit of knowledge regarding you. Additionally, he shares our gray eyes and sports that familiar little crease between his eyebrows when deep in thought, reminiscent of the way River looks while crafting her student council speeches." Phoenix glanced up from her menu, her keen intellect evidently assembling the details in her mind. "He shares the same tendency to touch his left cuff when feeling anxious, much like I do during science presentations." "Girls, could you please listen to Autumn's strained voice?" "No," Thad interjected softly. "They are entitled to clarity." He glanced at each girl in succession before turning his gaze to Autumn. The truth is what they rightfully deserve. What is the reality? River's voice was deliberate and precise, exploring the significance of your picture in the cherished keepsake of a mother. On the reason she retains the vintage sterling black business plans tucked away in her desk drawer. Exploring the reasons behind her silence on Father's Day. Autumn fell into an eerie silence, and Thad sensed that every breath had vanished from the atmosphere. He was unaware of Father's Day. I had no idea she still held thoughts of him at that time. Or perhaps River continued with that same meticulous attention about why Mom accepted that teaching position at Wellington Prep 9 years ago, despite it being across the country from where you were establishing your company. The elements unexpectedly fell into alignment. Wellington Prep was located in Seattle. That explains why he had never encountered them here previously. They are likely in New York for a significant event. The local science competition, the theatrical production, the leadership role in the student government. These were extraordinary accomplishments. These were the motivations that drew them back to the place where it all started. "You moved to Seattle," he murmured, his gaze fixed on Autumn. "That's the reason I was unable to locate you." "I had to," she whispered, and for the first time, he noticed tears glistening in her eyes. "Your path had been chosen. I had to select my own." Without sharing any details about them, the words escaped his lips with an edge he hadn't meant to convey, and he noticed the three girls recoil ever so slightly. "You made it abundantly clear that Blackwood Technologies was your top priority," Autumn said, her voice strained. "The evening you informed me of your decision to lead the company rather than embark on Sterling Black with me, you stated, and I quote, 'Some dreams have to die so others can live.' Do you recall?" He recalled. He had been utterly certain that he was making the right choice, treading the same path as his father, ensuring not just his own future, but theirs as he believed back then. He was unaware that their future was already blossoming within her. 3 small lives destined to inherit his gray eyes and her indomitable spirit. 3 weeks after that night, Autumn continued, her voice a mere whisper. "I discovered I was pregnant, accompanied by triplets. I visited your office to share this, but that stomach just plummeted." He anticipated her next words with precision. That day lingered in his mind for years, but not for the reasons he had always believed. Yet, I found myself in a board meeting as he concluded for her, his tone empty. "My assistant informed you that I was too occupied to meet with anyone, including you. I had made it clear that I should not be disturbed under any circumstances." Skylar inhaled quietly, as Phoenix's fingers brushed against her mother's beneath the table. For the first time, River's flawless posture wavered as she glanced between her parents. "You never came back," Thad said, the realization striking him with the force of a physical blow. "That was the final moment you attempted to connect with me. What would have been the purpose?" Autumn inquired, and now the tears flowed without restraint. "You had made your decision. The business owned by your father. Your enduring impact. I refused to be the one who ensnared you in a life that wasn't yours to select." The stillness that ensued was pierced solely by the soft chime of delicate porcelain from adjacent tables. Thad gazed at his hands resting flat on the immaculate white tablecloth, struggling to comprehend the enormity of what he had forfeited with a single directive to his assistant. "Silence, please. You believed you were shielding me," he said, his gaze rising to meet Autumn's. "In your silence, you believed you were granting me the freedom to chase my dreams. Weren't those aspirations more valuable to you than anything else?" The sharpness in her tone was softened by lingering sorrow. The illustrious Thaddeus Blackwood, stepping into his father's legacy, crafting a formidable empire? "An empty empire," he responded, his voice trembling. "Are you aware of what I accomplished with Sterling Black? What are our plans?" Each of them regarded him with the same look of intrigue. Even River appeared to abandon her flawless posture as she leaned in a bit. "I constructed it regardless. 3 years prior. Not in the capacity of our coffee shop chain, but rather as a philanthropic organization. It supports arts education and business training for disadvantaged young people. Each time I strolled by the coffee shop, memories of our dream flooded back to me. Your memory lingered in my thoughts. Autumn's hand darted to her mouth. The sterling black foundation? That is yours. He affirmed it was his, then turned his gaze toward the girls. And now I guess it belongs to them as well. In addition to all the other matters at hand. Phoenix's sharp intellect was evidently in overdrive. The organization that provided financial support for our school's new performing arts center? Is that named after my mother? Thad spoke gently. It's named after both of us. Sterling Black. I constantly reflect on the possibilities of what we might have created together. Skylar, usually so reserved, suddenly found her voice. Every time she comes across an article about the foundation in the paper, Mom is moved to tears. She maintains a collection of all the articles. Skylar. River interjected with a fierce intensity that stirred a deep longing in Thad's heart. Their mother had shouldered this burden alone while they were growing up. No, it's all right, Autumn replied, dabbing at her eyes with her napkin. It is essential for them to be aware. I saved every article because I wanted you all to understand that your FA, that Mr. Blackwood was making a positive impact in the world. That he was more than mere profit margins and corporate takeovers. But you never mentioned us, Phoenix said, her tone laced with a touch of reproach. We might have had the chance to know him. We might have contributed to that meaningful endeavor. Did you wish for that? Thad inquired abruptly, his gaze shifting from one girl to the next. To understand me? To join my journey? In a sense, we already are, River responded with a measured tone. Mother ensured we were aware of Blackwood Technologies' efforts towards environmental sustainability. We have been observing the philanthropic efforts of your organization. We are equal. She cast a quick look at her sisters, who offered silent support with their nods. Last year, we even invested our allowance money in shares of the company. 1 share apiece. Thad sensed an overwhelming pressure in his chest, as if his heart were on the verge of exploding. What about your shareholders? Just a few small ones, Phoenix clarified. However, we desire to possess a fragment of, indeed, your realm, even if you were unaware of our existence. I would have given you the world, Thad whispered, his voice thick with feeling. Everything. All that I created, all that I embody, it could have belonged to you. It ought to have been yours. What comes next? Skylar inquired, her typical vibrant curiosity dimmed by a sense of urgent longing. Is it possible for it to belong to us now? Autumn extended her hand toward her daughter, but Thad interjected before she could speak. It already exists. No matter your desires or preparedness, all that I possess is entirely yours. My identity, my enterprise, my mission, and my soul, if you choose to embrace it. Autumn's sudden gasp pierced the stillness of the moment. Thad, you simply can't. What exactly can't be done? His voice carried a softness yet held a resolute strength. Unable to provide my daughters with what is justly theirs. Is it possible to compensate for 9 years of missed opportunities? It's not that straightforward, Autumn argued. But River cut in with an unexpected intensity in her typically composed tone. Why isn't it? She inquired, her flawless demeanor faltering just a bit. Why does it have to be so complicated? We have dedicated our entire existence to understanding only a fragment of our true selves. Perusing articles about our father in business publications, tuning into his interviews on CNBC, feigning interest in tales of corporate triumphs when, in truth, she hesitated, gathering her thoughts. Ultimately, we were just curious whether our passion for numbers came from him or from you. The numbers are definitely from him, Autumn said softly, a faint smile dancing at her lips. Creativity has always been my forte. Yet both of you reside within us, Phoenix noted, her keen intellect evidently in overdrive. When Skylar performs, she embodies your dramatic flair, Mom, while also showcasing Dad's strategic thinking in her approach to each role. The term, Dad, lingered in the atmosphere like a delicate soap bubble, and Thad experienced a momentary flutter in his heart upon hearing it for the first time. As River takes charge of the student council meetings, Skylar brings a touch of warmth to the discussion. She incorporates her mother's teaching methods alongside her father's negotiation tactics. We've seen all your TED Talks, she remarked, casting a shy glance at Thad. Every single one? Thad inquired, his voice thick with feeling. On several occasions, Phoenix affirmed. Your public speaking patterns, management philosophies, and approach to corporate responsibility have been thoroughly examined. It feels as though we've been preparing for an examination we never anticipated would come to fruition. The waiter returned, his expression tinged with hesitation. Would you like to place an order? Indeed, River asserted firmly, once more seizing control of the situation. It's essential for everyone to take a moment to thoroughly examine the menus. And maybe, she remarked with a meaningful glance at her mother, to explore fresh opportunities. As they all reached for their menus, Thad observed the slight tremor in Autumn's hands. He longed to offer support as he once did before her college theater performances, yet he felt he no longer had that privilege. Or perhaps he did. Autumn, he said softly as the girls discussed appetizers. I understand this is overwhelming for all of us, but they're truly remarkable. Your efforts in nurturing them have truly been commendable. If you permit me, I wish to dedicate my life to earning their worthiness. Striving to earn your worth. We cannot simply wipe away 9 years, she murmured. Indeed, he concurred. Perhaps we can create something entirely fresh. Something far superior to sterling black might have existed. In unison, before Autumn had a chance to reply, Skylar's voice interjected with its usual fervor. Mom, they're serving your beloved chocolate souffle for dessert. Recall how you mentioned it brought back memories of your first date with? She halted suddenly, her gaze darting between her parents, her eyes growing wider with surprise. With father, presenting this, in this dining establishment. They were both struck by the memory at the same moment. Their initial outing at Le Jardin, struggling to manage it on their graduate student finances, savoring that single souffle together since they could only indulge in one dessert for the both of them. Had Autumn been visiting this place all these years, consistently choosing the same dessert, preserving that cherished memory? The expression in her eyes revealed all he required to understand. If you're finding this video enjoyable and crave more content of this nature, be sure to click that subscribe button and activate the notification bell. This ensures you won't overlook any of the incredible tales we have in store. Your encouragement truly aids in the channel's growth and allows us to continue delivering more of what you cherish. Thank you very much. The waiter came back to take their orders, offering a momentary pause from the emotional intensity. Thad observed the distinct ways each girl placed her order. Phoenix sought intricate details about the preparation methods. Skylar made her choice with vibrant enthusiasm, and River engaged in a delicate negotiation for a subtle menu adjustment, exuding diplomatic charm. Much like a board meeting, he whispered, drawing a curious glance from Autumn, the analyst, the innovator, and the negotiator. They embody the ideal corporate synergy. They're not a corporate team, Autumn said, her tone initially sharp before it softened. They are merely girls, our daughters, who should be free to simply be girls. Thad gave a slow nod. Indeed, you are correct. I apologize, I believe I'm seeking ways to connect with them through the soul realm I've experienced for the last 9 years. We don't mind, Phoenix interjected, clearly having been attentive. I've been curious about your recent shift towards sustainable technology investments. The market analysis you released last quarter indicated. Phoenix, Autumn interjected softly. Perhaps we could postpone the business discussion for. When is it scheduled for? River confronted the situation, astonishing all with her fervor. For an additional 9 years? Mother, we have navigated our entire lives delicately avoiding this topic. In his vicinity, about our identity. Perhaps it's time to cease the facade that we're merely 3 exceptional students at Wellington Prep. Skylar nodded with enthusiasm. Indeed. Do you realize how challenging it is to act like we don't see when the business newspapers feature Dad's picture on the cover? Or when other kids discuss the latest initiative from the Sterling Black Foundation? Or when Grandmother Sterling mentions that we possess our father's business acumen but declines to elaborate further on him? Phoenix interjected softly. Thad's head jerked upward. Does Margaret still mention me? It was purely by chance, River clarified. Typically following her second glass of wine during festive dinners. She has a picture of you and Mom from your college days in her study, but she always turns it face down when we come over. Thinking of Margaret Sterling stirred up a fresh tide of recollections. She passionately championed his relationship with Autumn during their college years, and her heartbreak was palpable when they parted ways. He had often pondered whether she was aware of the girls, if she had played a role in the choice to keep them away from him. He spoke gently, revealing that she had never forgiven him for prioritizing the company over her daughter. Over all of us, Autumn corrected, though her voice held less sharpness now. It seems we didn't allow you the opportunity to make a different choice. Would you possess? Schuyler inquired abruptly. Selected in another way? Had you been aware of our existence? The inquiry lingered, echoing softly like a held chord in a grand composition. Thad gazed at the expressions of everyone around him. These extraordinary girls, who bore his DNA, had been molded by Autumn's affection and wisdom. He reflected on the solitary years spent at the helm of Blackwood Technologies, the hollow triumph of every successful merger, the vacant penthouse that awaited him each night. Without hesitation, he replied, his tone gritty with determination. All that I've created, all that I've accomplished, pales in significance to what I lost with you. Alongside each of you, Autumn's breath hitched, and he noticed tears welling up in her eyes once more. The girls shared fleeting looks, a silent understanding flowing among them. Well, River said, adjusting her silverware with careful intent, perhaps it's not too late to choose a different path now. The arrival of their appetizers offered a brief respite of familiarity amidst the evening's surreal chaos. Thad observed Phoenix as she carefully captured images of her dish for her research, while Schuyler eagerly plunged in with excitement, and River held back, waiting for the others to begin before savoring her first deliberate bite. So, Thad inquired, you're all settled in Seattle now? At Wellington Preparatory School. Not for long, Schuyler exclaimed with enthusiasm, but she swiftly clamped her hand over her mouth as River cast her a cautionary glance. Whoops! Autumn let out a soft breath, placing her fork on the table. We had planned to make the announcement this evening, to be honest. Prior to all of this, I have received an offer for the role of Head of Creative Arts and Business Education at Riverside Academy, currently situated in New York. Thad felt a sudden jolt in his chest. Is it Riverside? That's a mere 10 minutes away from the headquarters of Blackwood Technologies. We understand, Phoenix remarked with significance. We conducted thorough investigations into the school's position in relation to several key attractions throughout the city. The girls were accepted into their gifted program, Autumn said gently. Comprehensive scholarships. We intended to relocate here the summer ahead of the upcoming school year. Where were you? River grasped the past tense right away. Mother, surely this won't alter our plans? If anything, Phoenix interjected. Being close to both parents could offer greater chances for academic and personal development. Schuyler nodded with great enthusiasm. Additionally, their drama department is outstanding. They have a business innovation club that collaborates directly with real companies. She let her voice fade, casting a hopeful glance at Thad. And perhaps, he suggested thoughtfully, they could be inclined to collaborate with the Sterling Black Foundation? Or perhaps the Youth Mentorship Program by Blackwood Technologies. Thad, Autumn cautioned, yet he noticed the determination fading in her gaze. I'm not attempting to win their favor, he stated hastily. However, these programs are indeed in existence. They are crafted for the exceptional intellects I observe at this table. Is it just to withhold opportunities from them solely due to their father's involvement? Their father, Autumn murmured gently, trying out the words. Hearing that spoken aloud feels quite surreal. Odd yet factual, River stated with her usual tact. As the president-elect of the student body at my current school, I can confidently assert that ignoring the truth seldom results in positive results. Phoenix placed her fork down with meticulous accuracy. I have been examining the factors related to our possible move. The educational prospects, the cultural benefits, the closeness to relatives, including recently found connections. She cast a fleeting look at Thad. The evidence compellingly backs the decision. I have already committed my audition piece for the Riverside Drama Club to memory. Schuyler included. Is that from the play you and Dad performed in college, Mom? The glass menagerie. Autumn's hand quivered as she extended it toward her glass of water. You discovered our vintage playbill? In your memory box, all three girls exclaimed together, then giggled at their perfect harmony. That memory box has a lot to answer for, Thad remarked with a faint smile before his expression shifted to one of seriousness. Perhaps it has been safeguarding these memories until we were prepared to confront them, until we were prepared to create new ones. River noted that Mom keeps insisting we shouldn't dwell on the past. We must consistently gaze ahead and strategize for what lies ahead. The future, Thad mused contemplatively. I've dedicated 9 years to envisioning a future I believed was meant for me. Strategic discussions, growth opportunities, and new ventures. As I sit here now, gazing at all of you, it dawns on me that I've been envisioning the wrong future all this time. The main courses arrived, steaming and artfully plated, yet the diners appeared to be preoccupied, their attention drifting away from the enticing dishes before them. Thad observed as Autumn instinctively adjusted Skylar's napkin, a nurturing intuition he hadn't witnessed unfold. I have a confession to make, he said suddenly, causing all four of them to glance up in surprise. The reservation for dinner on Tuesday night. It was more than mere routine. I held onto it for a reason. He hesitated, summoning his bravery. This was our moment to shine. An evening for two. Each Tuesday for a span of 2 years during my college days. It seems I haven't truly moved on from it. Just as Mom clung to her vision of the coffee shop, Phoenix watched intently. She keeps 3 distinct business plans on her desk, each tailored to reflect the current market landscape. Autumn radiated warmth. You went through my desk? For the sake of research, River explained with tact. We were seeking to comprehend. All things. All that we overlooked. Thad murmured gently. All that I overlooked. Initial strides, initial utterances. Skylar began with a smile. First business proposals. Last year, we attempted to market lemonade futures on the playground. Prospects. Thad found himself chuckling uncontrollably. What was the outcome of that? We dominated the market by securing pre-sales with the teachers, Phoenix explained. Subsequently, we channeled the profits into a cookie enterprise, which River made its way into the school cafeteria, Skylar declared with pride. The profit margins were quite respectable, River said, sitting up straighter. However, our mother insisted that we contribute the majority of it to the school library. Autumn shook her head, a smile playing on her lips. I should have realized they inherited that drive from you. They have been managing various enterprises since the age of 6. Thad's voice wavered just a bit. What was your initial endeavor? The girls shared knowing looks before Phoenix responded. We crafted and sold friendship bracelets. However, we introduced an unexpected element by providing an insurance policy. Should the friendship come to a close, they might return the bracelet for store credit. Credit for the store. Thad gazed at Autumn in wonder. At the age of 6, a comprehensive return policy system has been established, she confirmed. Finalized with a survey to gauge customer satisfaction. The data provided valuable insights for enhancing our product line, Phoenix stated with a serious demeanor. Thad sensed the familiar sting of tears welling up once more. They mirrored him in many ways, yet each possessed their own distinct essence. Influenced by the wisdom of Autumn, yet inherently driven by a strong sense of business acumen. I want to know everything, he declared abruptly, his voice charged with intensity. Each entrepreneurial endeavor, each theatrical performance, each scientific exploration. I'm curious about their initial experiences at school, the books that captivate them, and the aspirations that drive them forward. I desire. He gazed at Autumn with a desperate hope in his eyes. I aspire to take on the role of their father. Not only in a biological sense, but truly their father. If you would allow me to. We want that too, River said softly, representing the sentiments of all 3 girls. We have accomplished a great deal thus far, yet. She cast a quick look at her sisters, who offered nods of support. Yet, there has always been a sense that a crucial member of our life's team was absent. That's a rather professional way to express it, Autumn remarked, though her tone remained soft. Indeed, we are Blackwoods, Schuyler noted. Even if we had been utilizing the sterling name, the stillness that ensued was thick with potential. Thad gazed at Autumn, truly observing her, recognizing both the girl he had adored in college and the resilient woman who had single-handedly nurtured their daughters. What if, he mused thoughtfully, we ceased allowing the shadows of our past to shape our future? What if we harnessed all this affection, all this promise, and created something extraordinary? Not just exceptional black coffee shops, but something more profound, a sense of family? If you're finding this video enjoyable and crave more content of this nature, don't forget to click that subscribe button and activate the notification bell. In that manner, you'll be sure to catch all the incredible tales we have on the horizon. Your encouragement truly aids in the channel's expansion and allows us to continue delivering the content you enjoy. Thank you very much. Autumn gently wiped her eyes with her napkin, gathering her thoughts before she began to speak. A family isn't formed as effortlessly as a business, Thad. Building trust requires time and patience. Similar to a strategic investment, Phoenix suggested, eliciting a faint smile from each parent. Precisely, Autumn concurred. I truly value your excitement, but we must consider what is in the best interest of the girls. We're right here, River said softly. We have reached an age where our voices matter in this corporate merger. Thad found himself unable to suppress a laugh at her choice of words. Indeed, you are correct. Perhaps we ought to consider putting it to a vote. The democratic process and everything that entails. Oh, is it similar to a meeting for shareholders? Schuyler jostled in her chair. So, are we all stakeholders at this point? Though they were just minor shareholders, Phoenix reminded her sister. A smile graced her face as well. Well then, River remarked, adjusting her posture to an even more upright position if that was conceivable. As the acting chairperson of this meeting, I propose that we delve into the practical considerations of incorporating the CEO of Blackwood Technology into our family structure. Seconded, Phoenix quickly chimed in as she reached for her phone. I've begun compiling a list of advantages and disadvantages. Hold on, Autumn interjected, a trace of amusement lacing her tone now. This matter cannot simply be decided by a casual vote at dinner. What's stopping us? Schuyler inquired. After 9 long years of anticipation, isn't that sufficient exploration of the market? Thad leaned in, his tone gentle yet filled with urgency. Observe them in Autumn. They possess remarkable insight, demonstrate deep thoughtfulness, and clearly have the ability to grasp intricate scenarios. For all this time, they have observed me from a distance, seeking to understand their father through the lens of news articles and annual reports. Shouldn't they have the opportunity to truly understand who I am? And don't you have the right to know them, she said softly. Their true selves, beyond mere accomplishments and professional pursuits. Their anxieties, their uncertainties, their tousled hair in the morning and their evening irritability. Everything, he asserted with conviction. I desire every bit of it. The bright days and the dark days. The triumphs and setbacks. The science fairs and the scraped knees. Schuyler mentioned, I have a scar from falling off my bike, with a hint of helpfulness. Care to take a look? Not at the dinner table, dear, Autumn said instinctively, then realized she was slipping back into old habits of parenting in front of Thad. It was as if the weight of sharing these moments suddenly crashed down on her, overwhelming her in an instant. I have a proposal, River declared, retrieving a small notebook. A step-by-step integration strategy, if you please. Initiating weekly family dinners to create a foundation of compatibility, accompanied by planned engagements that resonate with our personal passions. Phoenix pressed on, grasping the concept swiftly. I possess a number of scientific hypotheses that I would like to explore from a new angle. I require assistance with my Dorothy monologue. Schuyler included. Mom mentioned that you were quite the remarkable wizard back in college, Dad. The term, Dad, still coursed through Thad's being. Yet this time it brought with it a wave of happiness instead of sorrow. He gazed at Autumn, attempting to express the depth of his emotions solely through his eyes. She remarked gently that they have undoubtedly taken after your knack for planning. And my resolve. Perilous mix, he nodded with a grin. A temptation that will be utterly irresistible. In perfect harmony, the three girls chimed in, their laughter bubbling up like a joyful melody. The dessert menus were presented, and without a word, they all instinctively understood what would be chosen. The chocolate souffle, a vessel of cherished memories. While they awaited its preparation, the dialogue shifted to a more earnest tone. Autumn leaned in slightly, her fingers delicately tracing the stem of her water glass, as if preparing to unveil a secret. There's something else you should know, she said, her voice low and inviting. There's a secret I've kept to myself, never shared with anyone, not even the girls. All four of them leaned in a bit, drawn in by the weight of her words. The moment I discovered I was expecting, I made multiple attempts to convey this to you. She fixed her gaze on Thad. I visited your office 3 times that week. Every time your assistant mentioned that you were too occupied. On the 3rd attempt, I caught a glimpse of you through the transparent barriers of your office, exchanging handshakes with the members of your father's board. Thad sensed the hue vanish from his complexion. The week of the merger announcement. During the process of transitioning the company to private ownership, she continued, her voice laced with admiration. You appeared so content, so confident in the direction you were taking. I observed you for a full 10 minutes, standing in the lobby, one hand resting on my stomach where our daughters were developing. Your eyes remained fixed on the papers before you, never wandering to the lobby where I stood in anticipation. At that moment I realized. What did you know? River inquired gently, her typical poise faltering. I couldn't be the one to hinder his aspirations. His father was unwell, the company relied on him, and a pregnancy, particularly one as complex as this. Autumn's voice wavered just a bit. I believed I was acting with honor, granting you the liberty to evolve into your true self. But you were both destined to be our parents, Phoenix said, her analytical tone softening with emotion. Based on my analysis, the likelihood of effective co-parenting would have been notably greater if both individuals had participated from the outset. Nice job making it scientific, sis, Skylar remarked, though her eyes were glistening with tears. Thad extended his arm over the table, paused for a moment, and then softly grasped Autumn's hand. She remained close. Are you aware of what I was working on in those documents that day? He inquired softly. She gently shook her head. Plans for growth in a coffee shop chain. I was exploring ways to acquire and transform some underperforming cafes, reshaping them into the vision we had for Sterling Black. I believed that if I could achieve success quickly enough, perhaps you would overlook my decision to prioritize the company. I had planned to catch you off guard with it. Oh, Autumn exhaled, a glimmer of comprehension lighting up her gaze. For 9 years, I dedicated myself to realizing another's vision, believing my own aspirations had slipped away. He tightened his grip on her hand just a bit. Yet my vision extended beyond mere coffee shops and business strategies. It was centered around creating something alongside you. And now, there's an entire world waiting to be crafted. River completed for him, her voice heavy with feeling. United, Phoenix asserted confidently. With her usual zest, Skylar wrapped up the discussion as a family. The souffle appeared at just the right moment, steam wafting from its rich surface, reminiscent of that evening 9 years prior when 2 college graduates exchanged their aspirations over a sweet treat. I propose an amendment to the integration plan, River announced, sitting up straighter as she struggled to hold back tears. Commencing immediately, not next week, nor after a thorough evaluation phase. At this moment, absolutely, Phoenix replied without hesitation, her eyes glinting with a hint of suspicion. Is everyone in agreement? Skylar inquired, her hand lifted high. 4 additional hands clasped hers with unwavering certainty. As they indulged in the souffle, 5 spoons were used this time instead of 2. Marcel made his way to their table, wearing a look of regret. I apologize, Miss Sterling and Mr. Blackwood, but we are approaching the end of the day. Everyone gazed upward in astonishment. Time seemed to slip away, with hours vanishing in the blink of an eye. The restaurant sat in near solitude, city lights flickering like stars beyond the windows, remnants of sunset hues lingering from when they first arrived. Time takes on a different rhythm when one is engaged in the act of reshaping their destiny, River noted with a thoughtful demeanor. Speaking of crafting narratives, Phoenix added, pulling out her phone, I've drafted a preliminary schedule for family activities, considering everyone's existing commitments and the best chances for connection. And I've already informed all my friends that I'm about to become a dad, Skylar declared, prompting Autumn to almost fumble her spoon. When did you do that? A group message was sent just 4 minutes ago, River clarified. Remarkably effective, though it may be a bit ahead of its time. Thad chuckled, a rich and heartfelt sound that brought smiles to all 4 of their faces. I guess that spares us the hassle of making a formal announcement. Regarding that, Autumn inquired thoughtfully, what precisely are we revealing? This goes beyond simply you meeting the girls, Thad. This encompasses all aspects. He extended his hand toward her once more, and this time she responded, bridging the gap between them. Everything aligns perfectly with my desires. The organization, the establishment, this kinship, they no longer need to exist as distinct aspirations. They can become a shared vision realized together. With effective corporate oversight, River contributed significantly to the humor, bringing joy to everyone. And consistent board meetings, Phoenix proposed. And evenings filled with family games. Skylar interjected. Every thriving organization requires activities that foster team cohesion. As they collected their belongings to depart, Thad lingered for a moment, observing his newly discovered family. The girls eagerly mapped out the activities for tomorrow, their voices intertwining in a symphony of excitement. Autumn observed them with a blend of affection and wonder, as though perceiving them from a fresh perspective. You know, he said softly, approaching her, I always believed my father's most important lesson was about business. He often remarked that success is founded on connections. Yet I misjudged it for an extended period. He wasn't referring to professional connections. He was discussing this, while Autumn concluded her gestures towards their daughters. Regarding family, Thad concurred, the paramount merger of them all. As they stepped out of Lujardin together, a family for the first time, the essence of their journey was unmistakable. At times, the most significant errors we make stem from our attempts to shield others from our affection instead of having the courage to express it openly. Success transcends mere dollars or accolades. It lies in the bonds we create and the love we are prepared to defend. It's always possible to adjust our path, to embrace love instead of fear, to transform lost chances into fresh starts. The most valuable investments we can pursue are not in financial markets or corporations, but in the affections of those dear to us. I appreciate everyone for tuning in to this remarkable tale. If you found it enjoyable and wish to support the channel, you can now utilize YouTube's Super Thanks feature to express your gratitude. Each input aids us in producing additional material of this nature. Remember to show your support by liking, sharing your insights on this family's journey in the comments, and passing this video along to someone who could benefit from its message. Keep in mind, love always has a way of returning when the time is right. Catch you in the next video.
Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. Have you ever met someone who completely changed the way you see the world? Today's story is about bold dreams, quiet strength, and a love that blossomed right in the heart of New York City. Let's dive in. The golden light of dusk spilled across the gleaming towers of Midtown Manhattan. Inside a sleek office on the 40th floor overlooking the Hudson River, Ethan Blake, CEO of one of New York's most powerful real estate firms, stood frowning at the blueprints spread out across the conference table. At 36, Ethan embodied success. Sharp, ambitious, wealthy, and disarmingly charismatic. The Hudson Yards project, a high-end mixed-use development, was more than a milestone. It was a statement, a monument to his vision, his empire. But the current designs? Bland. "This isn't it. I don't want another glass box," Ethan said, folding the papers with a sigh. "I want something iconic, bold, a structure that makes this city look up." His project manager, Marcus Green, ran a hand through his hair. "We've already rejected 4 firms. If we don't choose soon, construction will fall behind." "Then bring more people in," Ethan replied firmly. "There's got to be someone in this city who dares to think differently." 3 days later, she walked in Camila Reyes. No flashy designer dress, no luxury heels, just a crisp professional suit, her dark hair pulled back neatly, and a gaze that met the room with quiet confidence. In a space full of tailored suits and silk ties, Camila stood out. Not for excess, but for authenticity. "Good afternoon, Mr. Blake," she said, her voice calm but assured. "I'm Camila Reyes. Apologies for the delay. Brooklyn traffic at rush hour is a nightmare." Ethan looked up, and for a fleeting second, something shifted in his eyes. Curiosity, and maybe a trace of surprise. Without waiting for an invitation, Camila reached into her deep brown leather bag, pulling out a neatly printed portfolio and a few compact models. She placed each item on the table with deliberate care, as if laying out not just a concept, but a piece of herself. "I've studied the Hudson Yards site extensively," she began, voice steady, but her eyes lit with intensity. "Most of the buildings there are modern blocks, glass and steel. Beautiful, yes, but soulless." She flipped open her design, a trio of interconnected towers joined by green public spaces. The layout was inspired by Spanish colonial architecture, fused with modern lines, interior courtyards, arched balconies, hand-laid brick facades. Every detail radiated warmth, culture, and a distinct New York energy. "My design blends roots with the future," she continued. "In a city like New York, uniqueness doesn't come from shape, it comes from emotion." Ethan said nothing. He'd sat through dozens of pitches. None had felt like this. "Where did you study?" he asked, his voice lower now, more curious than formal. "Columbia," Camila replied. "I grew up in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. My family's Puerto Rican. My father was a carpenter. I grew up with the scent of wood and paint in my lungs. Architecture is how I tell the stories he never had the chance to finish." For the first time during the meeting, she smiled, gentle, genuine. "Camila," Ethan repeated her name carefully. "I think we should talk more about this design. Are you free tonight?" She looked at him without blinking. "I appreciate the invitation, Mr. Blake, but I prefer to keep all meetings within working hours." A soft but firm refusal, Ethan nodded, and for the first time in years he felt challenged, in a way that made his heart beat just a little faster. In the weeks that followed, Camila and Ethan found themselves working together almost daily. What began as strictly professional meetings around blueprints and technical specs slowly stretched longer, sometimes due to heated debates, other times simply because neither seemed eager to leave. Ethan was pragmatic, focused on cost, deadlines, and efficiency. Camila was his opposite, driven by emotion, aesthetics, and the human experience. Their differences led to passionate arguments, but also created something raw, something real in the way they interacted. One late afternoon, after a long site visit, Ethan suggested a walk through his old neighborhood in Brooklyn. They ended up at a small cafe tucked on a quiet corner. The autumn chill had settled in, and the soft glow of lights through the window gave the place a warm, lived-in feel. "Why architecture?" Ethan asked, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. Camila paused before answering. "My dad was a carpenter. When I was little, I'd follow him to job sites. To me, a plank of wood, a brick, it wasn't just material, it was the beginning of a story." She met his eyes. "I learned to imagine homes before they were built. who would live there, laugh there, love there. That's when I knew. It's not just a job, it's a purpose. Ethan said nothing at first, just watched her. In that moment, Camila wasn't just the architect he'd hired. She was the woman quietly challenging everything he thought he knew. Something in him began to shift, something he couldn't quite name, but he knew exactly where it started, with her. One crisp weekend morning, Ethan invited Camila to Highline, the iconic park built on an old elevated railway in the heart of Manhattan. He told her he wanted to show her a lot adjacent to the project, one they might expand into later. They walked side by side along the wooden path, surrounded by greenery and modern art installations in the quiet chill of New York's autumn. The hum of the city echoed in the distance, but between them, there was a rare stillness. Ethan stopped at a spot overlooking the Hudson River. He turned to her, eyes serious. "Camila," he began, "I know this started as just a project, but for me, it's become something else. You've made me see the world in ways I never did before." Camila didn't speak at first. Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where the sunset was starting to wash the skyline in orange. "We're from two different worlds, Ethan," she said softly. "You're Manhattan, I'm Brooklyn. You grew up on million-dollar deals, I grew up on layaway dreams. But when I'm with you," Ethan whispered, "I don't think about the distance. I just think about being closer to you." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to move away. But Camila didn't step back. She didn't flinch. When their lips met, it wasn't hurried or impulsive, it was a quiet confirmation that something powerful had begun, despite all odds. That autumn afternoon, Ethan brought Camila to the center of the Hudson Yards site, where, according to the plans, a hanging garden inspired by classic Spanish courtyards would one day bloom. Steel beams towered above them, casting long shadows, while golden sunlight wrapped the unfinished space in warmth. "I wanted you to see this place before it's finished," Ethan said, gently taking her hand, "because right here is where I want to ask you something." Camila turned toward him, surprised. Ethan took a deep breath, then pulled a deep gules velvet box from his coat. "Camila Reyes," he said, kneeling, his voice full of emotion, "you've changed the way I see the world. I used to think success was deals, numbers, power, but since I met you, I've realized true success is finding someone who makes you want to be better every single day. Will you build this life with me?" Camila couldn't speak. Her eyes welled up, and she nodded, then whispered a soft, trembling yes, just loud enough for the entire city to hear, in his heart. That night, back in her cozy Brooklyn apartment, with candlelight flickering gently around them, Camila reached for his hand. "Ethan," she said softly, "there's something I need to tell you. I've never been with anyone before, in every way. I grew up in a traditional family, and I always believed that part of myself should be saved for someone truly worthy." Ethan paused, then pulled her into his arms. "And you chose me," he murmured, his voice rough with emotion. "That's the greatest honor of my life." Just as they were beginning to settle into the rhythm of married life, still basking in the glow of quiet candlelit dinners and shared dreams, Camila received an unexpected email. The subject line was cold and clinical. "Design modification request, immediate attention required." Sender, Veronica Chase, Deputy Chair, NYC Urban Development Commission. Camila had never received direct correspondence from the powerful woman before. The message was brief but loaded. A priority meeting to discuss cultural alignment concerns in the current design, and the absence of representation from authorized community foundations. She set her phone down slowly. A chill ran down her spine. Intuition whispering, "This is not about design." Later that evening, over dinner, she brought it up with Ethan. The moment she mentioned the name, his expression shifted. "I know her," Ethan admitted, his voice lowering. "Veronica and I were involved a while ago." Camila looked up. "How long ago?" 4 years. "It didn't end well. She wanted more. I didn't. When she went into politics, we lost touch. Until now." Camila leaned back, her expression unreadable. not angry, but calculating. And now she's questioning the design I'm leading in the project you're spearheading? Ethan nodded slowly. Veronica never moves without purpose. If she's reaching out now, she wants something. Then let me be the one to meet her, Camilla said, her voice sharper than he'd ever heard it. I want to look into the eyes of the woman who thinks she can manipulate a project we've built, with our minds and our hearts. Ethan stared at her and saw it clearly. She wasn't just an architect or the woman he loved. She was a partner, someone he wanted beside him when the storm hit. That evening, the fundraising gala took place in a luxurious Manhattan hotel. Veronica Chase arrived early, her eyes scanning the ballroom like a director waiting for her play to begin. And her leading actress was already in place, a blonde woman in a striking red dress lingering by the bar, ready to approach Ethan. But what Veronica didn't know was that Camila had already been warned. Claudia, Veronica's former assistant, had revealed everything. Ethan and Camilla entered hand in hand, poised and composed. They knew exactly what to do. When Ethan accidentally separated to get a drink, the blonde woman moved in fast. She smiled, lightly brushed his arm, and leaned in with perfect timing. From across the room, Veronica began to approach, expecting a scene. Right then, Camila appeared beside them. No jealousy, no drama, just a flawless smile. "Excuse me, may I steal my husband for a moment?" Camila said sweetly, looping her arm through Ethan's. "Someone's waiting for us." The woman flushed, awkwardly stepping back. Camila didn't stop there. She led Ethan straight toward Veronica. "Miss Chase," she said, her smile unwavering. "Lovely evening. Oh, and we're about to launch a scholarship fund for architecture students from underserved communities. We'd love for you to consider partnering." Veronica froze for a moment, then nodded, speechless. Camila smiled again. This time, for real, Veronica's performance was over. But she had cast the wrong lead. After the gala, Veronica went quiet. No more emails, no surprise inspections, no forced meetings, just silence. The kind that feels more like surrender than resolution. Camila knew it wasn't approval, it was retreat, quiet and bitter. But for her, that was enough. The Hudson Yards project continued on schedule. Camila's Latin-inspired design was praised in the media as a fresh breath at the heart of a steel and glass metropolis. The courtyards, terracotta walls, and green spaces woven into the architecture made residents feel something rare in New York: connection, belonging. At the grand opening, Camila stood beside Ethan on stage. He held her hand under the flash of cameras and echoing applause. And then, before the press, Ethan announced the building's official name, La Vida. La Vida means life, he said, and this project proves that the most enduring structures are built from the heart, not from spreadsheets. As the crowd erupted in applause, Camila gently squeezed his hand. They looked at each other, not with the spark of something new, but with the warmth of something chosen, grown, understood. Weeks later, they moved into a small home in Brooklyn, a house Camila had designed herself. It had skylights that caught the morning sun and a tiny garden where she planted seeds her mother had mailed from Puerto Rico. Their life wasn't loud like the city around them, but it was steady and full. One rainy afternoon, while Camila was sketching in her sunlit studio, Ethan walked in and placed his hand on her belly, now curved with a quiet promise. "Do you think our child will love it here?" he asked. Camila smiled, placing her hand over his. "If they grow up surrounded by this kind of love, then anywhere will feel like home." Outside, the rain fell softly, but in their hearts, everything was calm. 2 years later, a gentle spring morning in Brooklyn, sunlight slipped through tall window panes, spilling softly across dark wooden floors. In the open kitchen of the home Camila had designed, the scent of waffles and fresh coffee lingered in the air, announcing the start of a slow, tender day. Ethan sat at the breakfast table, hair slightly tousled, shirt half-buttoned. On his lap was Leo, their son, nearly 2 years old, with curious brown eyes that sparkled with mischief and a mop of soft curls that danced every time he giggled. He was the perfect blend of Camila's warmth and Ethan's quiet strength. "Leo," Ethan chuckled, steadying the child's hand as he waved a spoon around. "Do you know what day it is today?" Leo babbled something incoherent, but his wide grin shone like the morning sun. Camila entered from the backyard, holding a small sprig of lavender she'd just picked. She wore Ethan's oversized white shirt dusted with flour. She didn't look like the architecture star who once graced magazine covers. She looked like a woman exactly where she was meant to be. "I'm baking your favorite," she said, kissing Leo's forehead before sitting beside them. "And don't tell me you forgot what today is." Ethan winked. "How could I? 2 years ago you said yes, the craziest decision you ever made, but the best thing that's ever happened to me." Camila rested her head on his shoulder. Leo nestled between them, slowly drifting off, cradled by the scent of breakfast, soft jazz humming in the background, and the warmth of a love that had ripened. Outside, the trees whispered in the breeze. Inside, it was peaceful, like a living painting. Nothing more was needed. Everything they'd once dreamed of was here now, in this home, in this child, in this love, and sometimes in the quietest moments, like a child's laugh echoing down the hallway or the soft tap of rain on glass. Ethan remembered the day she walked into that boardroom, and he smiled, knowing everything changed the moment she laid those models on the table. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. What would you do if love showed up where you least expected it? Until next time, keep believing in quiet miracles. Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. Have you ever stumbled into the wrong place, only to find exactly what your heart needed? Tonight's story begins with rain, heartbreak, and a hotel room opened by mistake. But what follows just might restore your faith in fate. Spring rain in Paris wasn't poetic tonight. It poured over cobbled streets with cold persistence, as if trying to wash every trace of emotion from the city. Elise Laurent, 26, shivered as she stepped into the grand lobby of Maison Moreau, one of the capital's most prestigious hotels. Her simple black dress clung to her body, soaked through from the rain. Her long, dark brown hair was tangled and wet, and her eyes, reddened by tears and storm water, glistened with exhaustion. In her hands she held nothing but a small purse, wallet, and phone. All she had taken when she walked out after witnessing the image now etched in her memory, the man she'd loved for 6 years whispering sweet words to another woman. Elise didn't scream. She didn't cry in front of him. She just walked away, her heels splashing in puddles, her heart pounding as if clenched by a cold hand. She found a stool at the hotel's bar and ordered her third cocktail. "Something stronger, please," she rasped, and the bartender nodded silently. The soft golden light around her did nothing to warm the hollow ache inside her chest. "How could I be so blind?" Elise whispered, eyes fixed on her glass. Each sip burned like regret, but the past clung to her, refusing to let go. A hotel staff member passed nearby, and by chance a room key slipped from his pocket. In her drunken haze, Elise bent down and picked it up. She thought it was hers, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. The card read, "Suite Étoile, the most exclusive suite in the hotel." Elise got up, stumbling toward the elevator. "Just needs sleep. Tomorrow will be different," she told herself. But she had no idea that the door she was about to open would lead her into a fate she could never have imagined. The suite étoile at Maison Moreau wasn't like any place Elise had ever stepped into. The door opened to a scene straight from a dream. Gleaming white marble floors beneath crystal chandeliers, deep burgundy leather sofas, a king-sized bed draped in pristine white silk. The air carried a faint scent of oak wood and mint, warm, clean, powerful. But Elise didn't notice any of that. She saw only the bed and felt the exhaustion anchoring her limbs. Kicking off her heels, she let them tumble to the floor and staggered toward the mattress. Everything blurred into alcohol and tears. In the bathroom, Julien Moreau, 34, CEO of Maison Moreau, had just finished a grueling virtual meeting with investors from Tokyo. He loosened his tie, letting the hot water from the shower pound against his tense shoulders. Julien was the definition of control, sharp, composed, unshakably successful. But ever since his ex-wife had left him in the wake of a scandal 3 years ago, he'd stopped believing in anything called love. He stepped out of the bathroom, wearing nothing but a navy robe, and stopped cold. Lying on his bed was a woman he didn't know. Wet hair, flushed cheeks, curled under his silk covers. Julien narrowed his eyes. He didn't speak right away, but before he could say a word, Elise stirred. Drunk and dazed, she looked at him and suddenly lunged forward, wrapping her arms around him like he was the one she'd been desperately waiting for. Why did you leave me?" she cried, her face pressed to his chest, her tears soaking into his robe. Julien froze. Logic screamed to call security, but something in her eyes, so raw, so fractured, held him captive, as if she had just cracked open a wound he hadn't touched in years. This girl wasn't dangerous. She was just broken. "You've got the wrong person," he said, his voice low and cold, but Elise didn't let go. She mumbled a name, probably the man who'd wrecked her heart. Julien exhaled sharply. He gently pried her arms away, catching her as she nearly collapsed. "Fine, I give up," he muttered, half annoyed, half resigned. He pulled the blanket over her and let her sleep on his bed. Then he lay on the cold leather sofa, far from comfort. All night, with the rain tapping against the windows, he couldn't sleep. He just listened to the quiet breathing of a stranger and wondered, who is she, and why can't I look away? Elise woke in an unfamiliar room, the pale light of early morning filtering gently through white curtains. For a few seconds, her mind floated in a haze until she felt the softness beneath her, a large bed wrapped in white silk sheets, so plush it seemed to swallow her whole. The air carried the scent of oak wood and mint, foreign but strangely comforting. Yet as her eyes traced the high ceiling, the crystal chandelier, and the marble floors, reality struck her like a slap. This wasn't her room. A sharp throb pulsed in her head, remnants of the alcohol still weighing down her senses. She sat up abruptly, her heartbeat racing as scattered memories of the night before came flooding back. Rain, cocktails, the soft jazz from the bar, and a man. She glanced around the room, and then she saw him. Julien was sitting on the sofa by the window, dressed in a white shirt and dark trousers, his hair still damp and tousled from the night before. He hadn't been sleeping. He simply sat there, watching the city wake up beyond the glass. When Elise moved, his eyes shifted toward her, cool, unreadable, but not unkind. Embarrassed, Elise clutched the blanket to her chest, her eyes wide with shame. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't know this wasn't my room," she stammered, voice shaking. Julien didn't answer right away. He gave a small nod, his tone calm but tired. "You were very drunk. I didn't call security because you weren't dangerous, just sad," he said quietly, like an exhale of truth. Her cheeks flushed crimson. Spotting her bag at the foot of the bed, Elise hurried to gather her things, searching for her room key, but it was gone. Hands trembling, she grabbed a pen and hotel notepad from the bedside table, scrawling a few uneven lines. "I'm sorry for the trouble. Thank you for not throwing me out. I won't forget your kindness." She left the note on the table, gave a small bow, and walked briskly out the door, never once looking back. Julien remained seated for a long while. Only after the door closed did he reach for the note she'd left behind. The slanted, hurried handwriting seemed to press into something buried inside him. For 3 years, no one had entered his life without an agenda, and yet this stranger who'd stumbled into his world by mistake left behind something heavier than a presence, a feeling. He didn't smile, but he didn't throw the note away either. Instead, he folded it carefully and tucked it into the inner pocket of his suit. Meanwhile, Elise had returned to her real room on the 10th floor. She washed her face, pulled her hair into a tight bun, and changed into a modest gray dress. Today was her interview at Maison Moreau, the career opportunity she had spent 2 years preparing for. She told herself the night before had been an accident, a blur to forget. But fate has a cruel sense of humor, because when Elise walked into the meeting room on the 30th floor, she had no idea that the man seated across the table was Julien Moreau, the same man whose room she had just walked out of that morning. Elise stepped into the interview room, her portfolio clutched tightly in her damp hands, despite having taken several deep breaths to calm herself. Other candidates were already seated, polished, poised, exuding confidence, but none of them made her heart freeze like the man sitting at the head of the table, the one who looked up the moment her name was called. Julien's gaze met hers like a blade slicing through still air. For a heartbeat, the entire room went silent. Elise stood still, spine straight, her fingers gripping her sketches like they were the only anchor to her sanity. His eyes, steely gray, were colder than she remembered, yet at the corners of his mouth something flickered, a twitch, a hint of amusement, as if he'd stumbled upon an intriguing secret. "Miss Laurent," Julien said, his tone calm but tinged with mockery, "do you often find yourself in the wrong place?" A few soft chuckles rippled through the room. Elise swallowed hard, cheeks flushed, but her voice remained steady. "Only when I'm overtired, sir. But I never repeat mistakes when it comes to my work." Julien paused, his gaze narrowing slightly. Then, with a curt nod, he said, "Proceed." Elise opened her portfolio, presenting her concept of blending natural elements into hotel spaces. Reclaimed wood, raw fabrics, and soft natural light to evoke warmth and tranquility. As she spoke, her voice grew firmer. She had rehearsed this for weeks. But every time her eyes flicked toward Julien and met his piercing gaze, her pulse betrayed her. Julien remained silent throughout the entire presentation. No comments, no reactions. Only when Elise finished did he set his pen down and ask, "Are you sure you won't lose your way halfway through?" Elise met his eyes without flinching. "If I make a mistake, I'll fix it. But I'm not lost. I'm carving my own path." For a second, Julien's lips pressed together, maybe to hide a smirk or perhaps in surprise. After the candidates left, the selection panel gathered to discuss. Julien leaned back in his chair, eyes lingering on the name Elise Laurent printed at the top of her file. "I want to keep her," he said. Lucas, his assistant, raised an eyebrow. "She's got potential, sure, but there are more experienced applicants." "You sure?" Julien didn't answer right away. He turned his gaze toward the window, where Paris sunlight spilled over the rooftops like liquid gold. "I have a feeling." A few days later, Elise received the email, "Congratulations, you've been selected as the lead designer for the Suite Étoile renovation." She wasn't sure whether to be thrilled or terrified, because that was the very room where everything had begun, and the man overseeing the project was Julien Moreau. Elise started her new role at Maison Moreau not long after that fateful interview. She had been assigned to lead the renovation of Suite Étoile, the very room where she had awoken in confusion and shame. As if fate hadn't mocked her enough, her direct supervisor on the project was none other than Julien Moreau. From the very first day, Julien was everywhere. Sometimes he showed up with the cool demeanor of a CEO, offering sharp critiques about material choices, lighting angles, or layout structure. Other times he appeared without warning, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her like he was the only one who already knew the ending of a story she was still trying to write. "So, are you planning to destroy the entire room?" he asked one afternoon, finding her surrounded by taped-up sketches and scattered samples. Elise clenched her jaw, refusing to rise to his bait. "It's called creative process, sir, not demolition." Julien had only smirked, that faint, unreadable smile that somehow made her heart beat faster than she cared to admit. She tried to keep her distance. She stayed late, buried herself in blueprints and mood boards, focused on minute details, anything to avoid catching his gaze. That look of his, cool and curious, made her feel both exposed and challenged. One morning, when she arrived at her desk earlier than usual, she found a vanilla latte waiting neatly beside her sketchpad. Tucked underneath was a small handwritten note, "Vanilla latte. Don't overwork yourself." No name. But the lingering scent of mint on the cup said more than any signature ever could. Elise didn't know how to react. She smiled faintly, torn between warmth and confusion. She'd thought Julian was made of ice, but clearly, something softer lived beneath the surface. A few days later, when the office was nearly empty, Elise stayed behind to work late again. The design floor on level 28 was silent, bathed in the yellow glow of desk lamps. She sat slumped over her table, surrounded by messy drafts, pencil smudges on her fingertips. Her head rested against her arm. Exhaustion had finally caught up with her. Julien passed by the hallway, a file folder in hand. He noticed the light. Curious, he stepped inside. There she was, fast asleep at her desk, hair falling gently across her cheek, breathing softly like a child lost in dreams. He paused, watching her for a long moment. Then, without a word, he slipped off his suit jacket and carefully draped it over her shoulders. The dim light turned the moment fragile, almost sacred. Julien didn't speak. He stood there, quietly watching her sleep, peaceful, fragile. Then he walked away, leaving behind a girl who had unknowingly stirred the part of him he thought had died long ago. The site visit to the outskirts of Provence was meant to inspire the design team for Maison Moreau's upcoming resort collection. Elise joined as the lead designer, but no one expected Julien to attend personally, a decision that immediately shifted the atmosphere. Spring weather, unreliable as always, betrayed them. What began as cloudy skies quickly turned to pouring rain. After an afternoon surveying old wooden cabins near the pine forest, the road back was blocked by a fallen tree. The team was forced to seek shelter in one of the cabins, a modest structure, warm but far from luxurious. Julien and Elise stayed in the main room under the guise of spatial assessment, a quiet living area with a worn sofa and a crackling fireplace. The lights were dim, the sound of rain tapping steadily against the roof tiles. Elise sat close to the fire, hugging a pillow, trying to appear unfazed by the nearness of him. Julien sat across, sleeves rolled, his eyes locked on the flames. "Have you ever been betrayed?" she asked softly, as if unsure whether she wanted an answer. He didn't respond right away. It had been a long time since anyone had asked him something so personal. "Yes," he finally said, voice low, rough, "and I should have seen it coming." Elise nodded slowly, staring into the fire. "I loved someone for 6 years, gave him everything, my dreams, my time, and still, I wasn't enough to keep him from lying." Julien was silent for a moment. Then his voice dropped, deeper, heavier. 3 years ago, my wife left. Not just left. She emptied our accounts, disappeared, and the media feasted on it for months. I didn't just lose her, I lost my faith in people. Elise looked at him. In the flickering firelight, he wasn't a CEO anymore. He was a man who'd been betrayed down to the bone. The silence that followed was thick, almost unbearable. Neither of them looked at the other, but the air between them changed. Warmer, heavier. Shared pain became a silent language. Julien stood and stepped closer. Elise lifted her eyes to him. Their gazes met, no words needed. He leaned down, slow and careful, and kissed her. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't planned, it was real. That kiss carried apologies, truths, and the fragile hope of something new. Elise didn't pull away. She kissed him back, her hands gripping his shirt as if to hold something from slipping away again. But then Julien stepped back, his eyes, moments ago open, clouded again with fear. "We shouldn't," he whispered, barely above a breath, and turned away. The next morning the sky had cleared. The team headed back to Paris. Julien sat in the front, quiet the entire ride. Elise watched the trees blur past through the window, her heart sinking. She had thought it was a beginning, but to Julian, someone who had once been left behind, it was perhaps just a moment he couldn't let himself believe in again. 3 days later, an email arrived. You have been reassigned to our Marseille office, effective immediately. No explanation, no farewell. Elise didn't ask why. She didn't protest. She simply packed up her sketches, walked out of the office, and left behind a kiss that never had the chance to become something more. Elise was in Marseille, working at a quieter branch, trying to forget. Trying and failing. Because every morning she stepped into the office, she saw that room in her mind. Every vanilla latte carried the memory of mint, and every time she remembered that kiss in the stone chateau, it wasn't the goodbye that hurt, it was the silence. Elise didn't return to Paris by accident. She came back because someone finally gave her the truth she'd quietly longed for but never dared ask. It happened on a late afternoon in the Marseille office. Lucas, Julien's assistant, stopped by during a short business trip. After a routine exchange, he stood to leave, then hesitated. "Elise," he said softly, "I think you deserve to know. Julien didn't send you away because you failed. He sent you away because he was afraid." Elise froze, her eyes fixed on his. Lucas sighed, hesitating for just a second before continuing. 3 years ago, his ex-wife betrayed him. She didn't just leave. She exploited his trust, disappeared when the company was on the brink of collapse, and left him in the eye of a media storm. Julien didn't chase after her, but he's lived with the fear ever since that anyone close to him will get pulled into that chaos. He thought that if he pushed you away early enough, maybe you wouldn't get hurt. Those words didn't wound Elise. They opened her eyes. Julien hadn't abandoned her. He'd tried, clumsily, to protect her, and she had let him, because she had been afraid too. That night, Elise boarded the first train back to Paris. As Julien prepared to step onto the stage to unveil the redesigned Suite Étoile, the doors to the Grand Hall opened. Elise walked in, gaze steady, heart no longer hiding. Without an introduction, she stepped forward, took the microphone, and looked straight at him. "My name is Elise Laurent," she said, her voice steady. "I designed this room. Then I was sent away. Maybe because I made mistakes. Or maybe because I walked too far into someone's life when I only meant to pass by." She paused, her gaze searching for Julien's. But sometimes the wrong step takes you to the right person. Julien walked onto the stage. He didn't speak at first. He simply reached out his hand. Elise placed hers into his, her smile trembling. Julien leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "I was wrong to let fear choose for me." Elise met his gaze, eyes glistening. "Then, let courage choose this time. I'm here because I choose you." Applause broke out, flashbulbs lit the air, and this time neither of them turned away. Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that the thought of losing them feels unbearable? Today's story is a quiet, beautiful reminder that even in the darkest moments, healing can find us, often through the most unexpected people. Let's begin. Morning sunlight filtered through the trees, gently touching the porch lined with blooming bougainvillea. Birds chirped cheerfully on the rooftop as a soft breeze brushed against spotless glass windows. In a quiet little villa nestled in the suburbs, life moved like a gentle melody. Ethan, a gifted architect, always started his day with a warm cup of coffee, watching his wife Lily bustling in the kitchen and his little daughter Sophie darting around with laughter. To him, it wasn't just happiness, it was everything. Lily was the sunlight of their home, always smiling, always tender, and Sophie was the laughter, the little spark of joy. Ethan used to believe that nothing in this world could take his family away from him. But fate always arrives when we least expect it. It was a warm afternoon after a light rain. The streets still glistened with puddles scattered like broken mirrors, reflecting the soft sunlight. Lily, just off work, hurried to pick Sophie up from preschool, something she did every day with the same unshakable joy. Sophie, only 4 years old, ran into her mother's arms, giggling like wind chimes. Lily scooped her up, kissed her soft curls, and the two waved cheerfully at her teacher before heading to the car. No one knew it would be the last time Lily's smile lit up the world. On the drive home, a large truck lost control on a slippery curve. The screech of brakes pierced the air, followed by the crunch of metal shattering glass and the screams of nearby witnesses. Lily's car was struck from the side, rolling over and over before landing in stillness. By the time help arrived, Lily wasn't moving. She had passed away on the spot. But in the back seat, amid shattered glass and twisted seats, Sophie was still alive, trembling, bleeding from a cut on her forehead, clutching her teddy bear and crying without sound. From that moment on, the light in that home was gone, taking with it the laughter, the joy, and the heart of a father. Ethan arrived at the hospital in a panic. The moment he saw Lily's lifeless body, he collapsed, as if the entire world had fallen apart. He held her close, trembling, tears pouring down his face. "Why did you leave me? You promised we'd grow old together," he whispered through broken sobs. From that day forward, the villa became hauntingly silent. No more laughter in the kitchen, no tiny footsteps on the wooden floor, no soft morning music, only a heavy, lingering quiet that wrapped around every wall. Ethan stopped going to work. He didn't shave, he barely ate. Each day, he sat alone in the living room, in Lily's favorite chair, staring at a framed family photo on the shelf. Lily was still everywhere. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her shoes waited by the door. Ethan couldn't let go. Every morning he woke, hoping it had all been a bad dream. And Sophie, she drifted through the house like a ghost. She didn't speak. She didn't play. She didn't cry, not in front of anyone. Only at night, in restless sleep, she whispered, "Mommy," barely louder than a breath. The grief in that house had no sound, but it was eating everything away, day by day, hour by hour. 2 years passed, but grief still clung to the villa like an old, stubborn fog. Ethan moved through life like a shadow. Sophie still wouldn't speak or smile. No matter how bright the spring sun or how golden the summer grass, inside the house, it was winter all year long. Grandma Rose, Ethan's mother, left her quiet village to stay with her son. Though her back ached and her hands trembled, she rose early every morning to cook, clean, and try to keep the household from completely falling apart. But her strength was wearing thin. One afternoon at the market, as she struggled to lift a sack of rice into her car, her knees nearly buckled. "Ma'am, let me help you," came a gentle voice. She turned and saw a young woman, slim, worn clothes, tired eyes, but a bright and respectful gaze. Her name was Mia. Orphaned young, she'd grown up in a group home, later adopted, then abandoned again once her adoptive family had children of their own. Since then, she had done whatever work she could to survive, carrying loads, washing dishes, sleeping wherever there was shelter. Grandma Rose looked at Mia and saw a flicker of hope among the ruins. "Would you like to come work at my house? Help with the cleaning, the housework? You'll have a place to stay." Tears welled up in Mia's eyes as she nodded gratefully. Grandma Rose didn't know if this was the answer, but a mother's heart whispered, "It's time to bring something new home." The next morning, just as the sun began to rise, Mia stood at the mansion gate with a worn cloth bag in hand. She wore her neatest dress, hair combed back, her face washed clean, though her eyes still carried traces of fatigue. When the gate opened, Grandma Rose gave her a gentle hug. "Welcome to your new home," she said. Mia stepped into the shaded courtyard, marveling at the quiet beauty of the place, but as she entered the house, she immediately sensed something heavy in the air, like grief soaked deep into every brick. That evening, Grandma Rose called Mia into the kitchen, her voice soft but serious. "You're a good girl, Mia, but my son Ethan hasn't been himself since Lily died. He lives like a shadow, always angry, always silent. You must be very patient. Work hard, ask no questions, don't touch anything unless you're told, and most importantly, never touch Lily's photo." Mia nodded respectfully. She knew she had walked into a house that was broken. The next day, Grandma Rose said goodbye, returning to the village to care for Grandpa Ben. Before leaving, she hugged Mia and said, "Keep the house in order and be kind to them, even if they can't be kind to you yet." As the car disappeared past the gate, silence reclaimed the mansion. Mia began her tasks, mopping floors, tidying rooms, washing laundry. Everything was spotless, yet the house still felt cold, as if no one truly lived there. That afternoon, while dusting a photo frame near the piano, Mia paused, staring at Lily's gentle smile. "She must have been a wonderful woman," Mia whispered. "What do you think you're doing?" a man's voice boomed from the stairs. Ethan stood there, eyes like fire. "Don't ever touch that photo again. That's my wife, not some decoration for you to clean." Mia lowered her head, heart pounding. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. But Ethan had already turned away, leaving only the chill of his grief behind. That night, Mia carried a tray of food up to Sophie's room. She knocked gently on the door. No answer. She tried again. "Sophie, it's Mia. I brought you dinner." Still silence. Mia slowly opened the door. The room was dim, the curtains tightly drawn. Sophie sat curled in the corner of her bed, clutching her teddy bear, her empty gaze fixed on nothing. Mia walked quietly to her, kneeling beside her. "You don't have to say anything if you're not ready, but I'll be here," she said softly. She placed the food tray on the bed and tried to smile. "I made carrot soup, your favorite." Sophie didn't look. A second later, she suddenly pushed the tray off the bed. The bowl shattered, soup spilling across the carpet. Mia gasped, but she didn't yell. She simply bent down, picked up each piece of broken bowl, and wiped the spill. "It's okay, I'll clean this. I'll bring dinner again tomorrow. I won't give up." That night, when the house was quiet, Mia returned, with a little stool and an old storybook. She sat beside Sophie's bed and asked gently, "May I tell you a story?" Sophie didn't respond, but she didn't turn away either. So Mia began, her voice warm, gentle, slow. She told a tale about a little girl named Amira, who had no friends until a butterfly landed on her shoulder and changed everything. Mia used her hands, changed voices, even made silly sounds to make Sophie smile. Sophie didn't laugh, but she didn't look away. The next night, Mia returned, and the night after that, she told stories of singing lions, little birds who couldn't fly but still became queens of the sky. After each one, she softly sang lullabies, tunes she remembered from the orphanage. She didn't know that just beyond the cracked doorway, Ethan had started standing there, silently listening. The full moon cast its gentle glow through the window, lighting the small room where Sophie lay silent, hugging her teddy bear. Tonight, Mia didn't bring a book. She sat on the little stool, looking at Sophie with soft, kind eyes. "Tonight," she said quietly, "I want to tell you a different story, not a fairy tale, my story." Slowly, Sophie turned her head, eyes wide, listening in silence. I don't know who my parents are, Mia began, her voice trembling slightly. When I was a baby, I was left at the steps of an orphanage. No name, no note. The name Mia was given to me by a kind woman who worked there. She spoke of life in the orphanage, the cold nights, the hunger, the joy of sharing toys with other children. Then she was adopted by a couple. She hoped for a real home, but when they had children of their own, everything changed. They threw her out like she had never mattered. I slept in markets, worked just to eat, until I met Grandma Rose. Sophie blinked rapidly. She didn't cry, until Mia whispered, "But you, Sophie, you had a mommy who hugged you, who told you stories. You have a daddy, you have grandparents, you are not alone." Sophie suddenly sat up, lips quivering. Then, without a word, she threw her tiny arms around Mia, tears streaming like a long-held storm finally breaking. "I miss my mommy," she choked, her voice, after 2 years, finally breaking the silence. Outside the door, Ethan stood frozen, his heart clenched and then softened in a way it hadn't in years. His daughter had finally spoken. Ever since Sophie spoke again, the mansion felt warm for the first time in years. Laughter began to replace the silence. Every morning, Sophie rushed into the kitchen to hug Mia tightly. At night, she refused to sleep unless Mia told her a story. Ethan watched quietly from a distance, offering silent gratitude, and, occasionally, the corner of his mouth lifted into a smile. They were small smiles, fleeting, but they were the first cracks in the wall he had built around himself for 2 years. Mia never tried to force joy. She simply cared for Sophie, kept the house gentle, and was quietly present, as if she had always belonged. One day, Ethan caught Mia placing a bright red maple branch into an old vase that once belonged to Lily. He nearly scolded her, but stopped. The way she handled the vase, with such reverence, the way she placed it like honoring a memory, not replacing it, it stirred something in him. From that moment, Ethan began to notice more. The soft giggles Sophie shared with Mia, the gentle way Mia untangled his daughter's messy hair, the tenderness in her eyes that looked like a mother's. That afternoon, maple leaves danced across the backyard. Sophie sat beneath the tall tree, crayons scattered, tongue peeking out as she drew. When Mia stepped outside with a towel in hand, Sophie quickly hid her paper. "Mia!" she called out. Mia bent down, smiling. "What is it, princess?" Sophie held out the drawing. "Look, I drew our family. 3 stick figures. One tall, one small, one with long hair. Underneath, she had written, Daddy, me, Mia. Around them, a bright red heart." Before Mia could speak, Sophie asked softly, "Will you marry my daddy?" Mia froze. "What?" she whispered. At that moment, Ethan stepped onto the porch to take a phone call, but stopped, hearing the question. "I want you to be my mommy," Sophie said. "You make Daddy smile again. You make me feel safe. You two fit, like puzzle pieces." Ethan walked over, gently taking the drawing from his daughter's hands. He stared at the names, the heart, the hope etched by a child's love. Sophie looked up and whispered, "I just want a family one more time." Ethan didn't say a word. He simply knelt beside her, pulled her close, and held her tight, as if he was holding the last missing piece of his soul. A few days later, Ethan came home earlier than usual. He stepped into the kitchen, where Mia was quietly washing dishes. "Mia," he said softly, his voice deep but gentle. She turned, slightly startled. "Yes, sir?" "Get ready, please. The 3 of us are going out tonight." "Out? Really?" Mia asked, surprised. Ethan smiled with a hint of mystery. "It's a special evening." That night, Mia walked down the stairs in a soft, pale blue dress Grandma Rose had once given her. Her hair was neatly pinned, a few curls falling gently around her cheeks. When Ethan saw her, he froze for a second. "You look beautiful," he said, quietly. Mia blushed. "Thank you." "No more sir," he smiled. "Just call me Ethan." Sophie squealed. "Where are we going? Will there be ice cream?" The three of them arrived at a cozy garden restaurant filled with twinkling lights. A table had been reserved just for them, complete with Sophie's favorite mango juice. They laughed, played napkin games, and shared silly stories under the golden glow of lanterns. But when dessert was served, Ethan stood up and knelt beside Mia. Mia's eyes widened, and Sophie shouted, "Daddy, propose!" Ethan took Mia's hand, his gaze deep and sincere. "Mia, you came into our lives like a miracle. You healed my daughter's heart, and mine too. I never thought I could smile again. Not truly, until I saw Sophie laugh because of you. I know you've been through pain, but if you'll let me, I want to give you a new life, a real family, a home that will never leave you behind again." He opened a small velvet box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring. "Mia, will you marry me?" 1 month later, the once silent, cold villa bloomed in white and gold. Bougainvillea spilled over the porch. Soft music floated in the morning sun. Mia stood beside Ethan, hand in hand, with little Sophie between them as the sweetest flower girl. All eyes were on them as the priest read the vows. Ethan slipped the ring onto Mia's finger and kissed her softly, to the cheer of the guests. Sophie shouted, "Daddy, kiss her again!" making everyone laugh. Grandma Rose wiped her tears. Grandpa Ben held her hand tightly. They looked at their son, once shattered, now whole again, and more. The next day, Sophie wore her crisp new school uniform, her hair neatly tied, one hand tightly holding Mia's. "Nervous?" Mia asked. Sophie nodded. "Yes, but excited. I want to tell my friends everything." Ethan stood by the car, smiling. "My little princess is growing up." As Sophie walked into school, Mia stood at the gate, pride shimmering in her eyes. Ethan came beside her and whispered, "Thank you for believing and staying." That afternoon, Mia sat under the maple tree in the yard, watching Sophie draw with white chalk on the pavement. Sophie pulled out her crayons again and carefully drew one more figure above the heart. A woman with long flowing hair, soft white wings, and a gentle smile. "That's Mommy," Sophie whispered as Mia sat beside her. "She's not here anymore, but she's watching us from the sky." Mia wrapped her arms around the little girl, tears quietly falling. Ethan walked over, knelt beside them, and looked at the drawing. He gently nodded. On that paper now was a complete family, whole and full of love, even if one heart lived in heaven. The house that once fell apart no longer echoed with silence. It held laughter, love, and a light that would never fade. And on the paper Sophie held tight, the sunlight touched the wings of her angel mother. A quiet reminder that love, once true, never really leaves. If this story touched your heart even just a little, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Noah's Stories. Sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness, one voice, or one little drawing to bring a broken family back to life. What did you feel when Sophie drew her angel mom? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay kind, stay open, and stay close to the light.